Bird, 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 bird. Get him. Yeah! Ron Babe was right. Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry. Hey, everybody, it's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. It is April 9th. To most of you in this side of the world, it would be Easter. And we had a great weekend. We actually celebrated our Easter dinner on Saturday. It was easier with families and other get-togethers and in-laws and outlaws, and had a fantastic time. Had two of our daughters over, the ones that live in Michigan, their husbands, the kids, the Easter egg hunt. We did the whole thing. It was almost corny. It was right out of a Norman Rockwell. Yeah, it was great. So I hope you're having a good one or had a good one when you're listening to this. And I hope that you know our title sponsor, OnX Hunt, is there for you. They're there for the podcast. They're there for the Upland Institute. Doesn't matter what you want to do, where you want to explore. There's like 1,000 uses for OnX. And if I don't like long intros, so I'm not going to name off all 1,000 of the uses for OnX, but you know what they are. And, of course, you can get a 20% discount as any listener with HDP20 for your OnX Elite program, which will also get you into the only deep discount for the Upland Institute. So there's a little teaser. You know, if you've been thinking about training your dog, you got a new dog, well, if you're an OnX Elite member, there's the ticket. There's the ticket to paradise. There's a ticket to training. Cannot thank OnX enough, our title sponsor. Now, Pike Gear, I can't thank them enough either. They've been putting clothes on my back, socks on my feet, coats on my shoulders, vests over my shirts, belts around my belt loops. I mean, everything. They have everything. Technical clothing for the upland hunter. Nothing in their lineup you would never have buyer's remorse, ever, with Pike Gear. Same as Boss Shot Shells. I don't know anybody who's ever had buyer's remorse from Boss Shot Shells. It is the only copper-plated bismuth out there in the world, or the galaxy, or the Milky Way, whatever you want to say. It is the only shotgun shell manufacturer that copper plates bismuth. Because why? Because they have the patent on it, and nobody else can do it. So there. And you will see better performance out of your shooting, meaning you got to hit them. Boss doesn't make you a better shot. They just make better shot. How's that? Ooh, that's pretty slick. Like Walton's, they don't make every piece of equipment in their catalog, but they represent every piece of equipment in their catalog, and you cannot find more stuff to turn your kitchen into a wild game kitchen, from spices to everything mechanical, right down to an apron if you want to look like a real butcher when you're butchering up your game or making sausage. Everything you could possibly need. Literally everything. Just get the catalog. I've told you 100 times. Just get the catalog, okay? If you haven't gotten a gunner kennel yet, I understand, you're a little behind. If you haven't gotten a gunner kennel food crate, or if you heard, I don't need a food crate that holds 50 pounds of food. I've got one dog. Gunner Kennel came up with the food crate mini, and it holds about 30 pounds of food. Just great for a bag of food. Long trip, keeps it fresh, keeps it dry. You could go down a river with it as long as you latched it and put the pin in it. If your kayak tipped over or your whatever it doesn't matter. They keep your food as fresh and safe as they keep your dogs and their kennels. Just like Garmin keeps track of your dogs. Like, there is no other, it's like I said before, it's that one word. It's like share. It's like Bono. It's Garmin. You don't say Garmin this, Garmin call. It's just Garmin. They get us safely from airport to airport, and they get us safely from hunt to hunt with our dogs. And if you're looking for Garmin products, you got to go to W Hunting Supply. Absolutely. You don't want to call up some company or find something online. You have no support. You have no idea what you're doing. I would never, ever consider going anywhere but W Hunting Supply to get my gear. I wouldn't. Nor would I even consider feeding a different dog food than Purina Pro Plan. Well, all right, that could be a bit of a fib. I have fed Purina One back in the day. I've been on the road and had to go to the grocery store and got Purina One, but it's Purina. It's like that one name, like I said with Garmin, just one name, Purina. That's you know what they do. You know who they sponsor. You know who they support. They support everybody out there in this dog world, just like Canine Athlete does. You want a little extra hydrate and recover or something for your old dog to turn him into a new dog. That's kind of a misnomer. It's not going to turn him into a new dog. It's going to keep him like a new dog. They're probiotics. Everything you could do to supplement your dog's diet and exercise is from Canine Athlete, the company Wilderness Athlete, and they have the same products for you. They do. I just finished a Hydrate and Recover. You know, I don't normally like grape, but I had a can of grape left, a jar of grape left over from the Pheasant Fest show, and it wasn't like grape knee-high. It was good. It was really good. I loved it. What else? The HTP store, Hunting Dog Podcast store, I think the onesies, well, I think, believe it or not, there must be a lot of people having babies because the onesies are always number one. I mean, the T-shirts and the hats and the water jars and the neck gaiters. Well, no one's buying neck gaiters this time of year. They're trying to buy everything that feels like spring. But everything you could possibly need, if you like the Hunting Dog Podcast logo, we have several logos on there. My daughter Kelsey made them. My daughter Jessie markets it. Go to the HDP store. While you're on the HDP Podcast website, you can always click on the donate button, which brings you to Patreon. We have a Patreon Zoom room coming up this coming Thursday. I think it's this Thursday. Let me think. I think we're going to do it this Thursday, the Patreon Zoom room. And we're going to catch up and see what everybody's been doing. And we're going to talk training. We're going to talk trash. I'm going to let my patrons know about my newest. Oh, this is big news. I can't say it because it's not official yet. But, you know, some things change. Like you haven't heard me mention a couple of products. Well, certain companies just say, you know, we tried it and we're not doing it, or we had a problem. But there is something. Everyone's always asked me, what happened to your beer sponsor? Well, I just tripled down on that. I'm telling you what. You guys know what I drink. Just wait. My Patreon patrons are going to get a first peek at that. Whew, it's going to be unbelievable. I just can't wait. Did I get everybody? I think I did. I got Onyx. I got Pike Gear, Boss Shot Shells, Walton's, Gunner Kennels, Garmin, W, Purina Pro Plan, Canine Athlete, Upland Institute, everything. I don't know what else to tell you. So this episode I did in a barn, so it was used on my directional speaker mics. It's a little tinny, a lot of people at the table, but a long conversation, everything from hunting quail to the good old days to weather reports. We had a quail or a Oklahoma State. Oh, what's Tell's title? Well, he'll tell you on the episode. Anyway, this is the one man that knows everything about the state of Oklahoma. And when it comes to upland birds in the state of Oklahoma, this is the guy to know. And we talk about El Nino, El whatever it is, the droughts, the birds, the habitat, the fundraising, and we just had fun. Yeah, we just had fun. I was really glad the Canadian Valley chapter of Quail Forever invited me down, and this is what we did on Saturday after a little training day. We had a ball. You're going to have a ball. You guys have a good week. Wait till next week episode. You're going to love it. That's it. That was easy. What was it? 8 minutes? Come on, that's damn near a record. Okay, so you know I can't do an intro that's only 8 minutes long. Anyway, I forgot to tell you that my patrons, now if you join in the month of April, all new patrons are going to be in the running for a gift package. But every month we're also going to have a gift package for everybody who's been a long time patron, whether it's 2 months, 2 years, or a decade. So we've got a really cool thing coming up here for all patrons. And I'll be recording this week with Tyler Webster from Birds, Booze, and Buds. And patrons will get that episode, and patrons only. Now, you're not going to learn much, but you know how me and Tyler get together. So that is another benefit of being a patron. A new patron's in the running for a gift that month, and all patrons are in a running for a bigger gift. Now wait till you see this stuff. Oh, it's unbelievable. Hey everybody, it's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. I am where am I? I'm in Oklahoma, but where am I?
Minko, Oklahoma.
Who?
Minko.
Minko?
It's Indians.
Sorry, I saw another town that said like Dead Lady Crossing or something.
No, that's a creek.
Oh, that's a creek.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I was invited down by the Canadian Valley chapter, Quail Forever chapter, come down and do a little glad handing. And on day 2, we came over to a wonderful facility. But I'm going to introduce this from left to right because I don't know last names or anything. So you start off there, Jen.
I'm Jenny. I'm David Lindsay's girlfriend, and this is his place. We're going to go to Laura, though.
I'm Laura McIver. I'm Oklahoma and Kansas, southern Kansas, Quail Forever and Pheasants Forever regional rep.
David Lindsay.
That was just it, David Lindsay. Yeah, I didn't have any problem dragging anything out of him all day.
With Wahoo Kennels.
I'm David Lindsay. I'm the owner at Wahoo Kennels.
Wahoo Kennels. That's better.
I'm Watson Thomas, and I like to shoot quail.
And he also goes by the name Bill.
I do. Wild Bill.
Because that's his actual given name.
I'm James Deach.
And
I'm Tel Judkins. I'm the upland game biologist with the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation.
all right, start with you. Where's the quail?
Yes.
on.
So here in Oklahoma, we actually have 2 species of quail. So we have the northern bobwhite, of course. We also have the blue quail or the scaled quail, whichever side of the fence.
Where
you're
on my
on.
map are we looking here?
So if we're looking at a map of the state of Oklahoma, roughly the panhandle and kind of where the panhandle attaches to the pan, if you will,
Yeah.
or where you can expect
The
to
handle.
find some scaled quail. But for bobwhite, we actually have them statewide here in Oklahoma.
Right. Is there any, I don't want to say secret spots, is there parts of parts of Oklahoma, because it's pretty much privately owned, right? I mean,
Yeah, so we're
I mean,
about
the state of Oklahoma is.
Yeah, we're over 90% private land here in
Okay.
Oklahoma, roughly 97% privately owned. And so for the hot spots, if you will, or the spot most people think about for quail hunting is northwestern Oklahoma. So town out in northwest Oklahoma named Woodward. And that's kind of a center point most people use to focus on quail
Right.
hunting.
That'd be like the town in Wisconsin that says they're the grouse capital.
Right, yeah.
They're grouse everywhere in Wisconsin,
That's
but they
usually
get to be
pretty
the
good,
grouse capital.
It's usually a pretty good anchor point for folks.
Right. And what's your job entail for the state?
So for my position, if it's quail related, it falls under my umbrella. So I'm going out and working with landowners to try to improve quail habitat. I'm working with partners like Quail Forever to try to promote quail hunting and conservation here in Oklahoma. But I'm also working the research side with universities here in Oklahoma. Go Pokes, Oklahoma State University. We do a lot of partnering research with them. But also working with the department on doing our surveys for roadside surveys and quail counts and whistle counts and crow counts on pheasant and all that type of stuff. So I wear a lot of different hats here as the quail guy.
And earlier I asked you how many of you are there, and you said 1.
Yeah, if it's
So you
yeah.
got 90% private land and 1 biologist?
So yeah, for exactly.
I thought the state was in a water drought, not in an employee drought.
Exactly. So we also do have private lands biologists. We've got 5 different private lands biologists around the state that go out and work with the landowners as
Gotcha.
well. And we also have some partner positions with Quail Forever, where we've got some biologists on
So
the
there's
ground.
more than just you.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, that's good. It's good to know.
If I might add,
Yeah.
I mean, they've got some incredible managers on a lot of these wildlife management
Absolutely,
areas
yeah.
that work in conjunction with, they're the day-to-day guys, and they do an outstanding job. And a lot of time, they're kind of out there without a lot of help.
Yep.
And these guys, like I said, tail spread pretty thin.
Yeah.
Those guys do an outstanding job. I mean, there are a lot of acres of public land wildlife department and some U.S. forest land
Yeah.
that they have to manage,
Right.
and they're not exactly handed a huge toolbox to get that job
With the
done.
credit card.
Yeah,
No.
So is like, we were talking earlier about burning.
yeah.
Is it the goal that every piece of property that is managed for habitat is burned at some point? I know it's an odd question.
In a dream world, yes, absolutely.
In a
That
dream
would
world,
be-
that would be a thing.
So, you look at across private land usage anywhere in the country, you've got a mix of kind of what's going on, whether it's livestock and cattle grazing or horsemanship or just hobby farms, or is it row crops or what have you.
Yeah.
All of those can kind of play a role when it comes to quail conservation, but when we're talking about using prescribed fire, that's typically managing your woodlands and your grasslands is where we're looking at that mostly. Obviously,
You're not just
burning
burning-
a cotton field's not going to do much good for anybody.
Right. And then, David, your family's been here, you said, since the wagons came through.
Yeah, this southwestern Oklahoma, everything South Canadian River was the last that was open to settlement in the state of Oklahoma.
Like homesteading,
Yeah, our
160
people
acre
came from
things.
northern Missouri, up around Wabalo. Don't know if you're familiar with that. A lot of rocks and trees, and they came down here, and hey.
They must have been in shock.
Well, and Tel probably has heard this or seen it. There's remnants everywhere. A lot of pastures are terraced. When the settlers came in, they didn't come from great land in those other states.
Right.
They came because this land was open and it was free.
Free.
And they broke out everything. There's a reason the Dust Bowl happened, because 60 acres and a horse and a plow, and everything, this whole country was broke out. There weren't any canyons and washes and stuff here. You know, my great-granddad said when he was a kid, they could ride to town in a buggy, hold their hand out the side of the buggy and touch the top of the grass.
Really?
Them days are over.
Yeah.
People were trying to survive. And
Yeah.
what was America? 70, 80% rural?
Oh,
And so
easy.
we changed the landscape
Yeah.
overnight. And we've been here since then, and a lot of people have tried to put it back in grass. Conservation techniques have come light years from where they were back then.
Yeah.
You know, there was a time when they wanted everybody to plant love grass or lespediza.
Right.
Build the soil. It's the bane of our existence now. You know, a woody legume that nothing will eat, you know,
Right.
basically. But, we've been here since then, and when I was young, there wasn't a deer anywhere in this country around us. Now we're overrun with deer. There were quail everywhere, and the quail have quite literally,
Yeah.
you know.
Now, you did say some of your property, you've got a few
Yes,
covey
yeah.
here and there.
Yeah, we've got some.
But that takes what, keeping everything off it and letting it?
We don't spray.
Yep.
It's a great habitat.
Yeah.
We've got sand plums, you know, natural, your ragweed. It's all blue stems, little blue, big blue, side oats, gamma grass.
It would look more like
buffalo
it did
grass.
back in the day.
It looks like it did when they came
Yeah.
into this country.
Not overgrazed.
Right.
Just managed properly at a
Right.
right rate. That's
Right.
one of the big ones.
Yeah, and just let me throw this in, you know, what Tell's talking about grazing rates, and I do. We're in a severe drought, so
Right.
there's places that you never saw overgrazed that are really overgrazed. But, you know, I tell people, you know, some of these places, they think, well, let's just leave everything, let's get the livestock off and let it grow up. You know, before we settled this country, there were 60 million buffalo going up and down.
Right.
Grazing
million
these
big cows.
grazing these prairies, and the wildlife all.
Grazing wasn't the issue.
That's right. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
there's a fine balance there,
Right.
but you know, it's all part of the.
For your history here, and I know you're a tad younger than I am, but you're no spring chicken.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, that's a compliment. Okay. But when did you see it kind of drop off? Because
I saw it. I can remember and I might have the year off. I remember in maybe 2011, maybe around then. And Tail probably has the year's
Got the
population.
graph pulled up.
I just remember we were out at Black Kettle out in Roger Mills County. And my hunting partner, we've hunted 1,000,000 miles together and been in 1,000,000 birds. We hunted 3 units at Black Kettle, and the first covey of birds we saw was at 4:30 in the afternoon, and there were 6 birds.
Wow.
We didn't even shoot.
Wow.
And anybody that's ever been, and a lot of people from all over America have been to that place, been out to Black Kettle.
Oh.
That used to, one time we counted 17 different state license plates in the motel parking lot. But
And
it just fell off, and we knew then something was wrong.
Yeah.
Because we went from 25 coveys a day, 20 coveys a day out there.
Wow.
To you covered a lot of country to see 2 or 3 coveys.
wow.
And then it came back, maybe 16?
15, 16?
Yeah, so
We had 2 or 3 years there that they can be biblical. When they make a comeback, they can
When
be
the weather's
prolific.
right and everything's right.
And it was everywhere. Southwestern Oklahoma, we hunted some of that new stuff. It was before they acquired the new stuff at Sandy Sanders. it had really gotten bad, it came back. Down here west of Lawton at Mountain Park, phenomenal. It was just anywhere you went.
Everywhere, you just-
Pack saddle was incredible. And then,
Well, just east of here, we had a farm with a section. You walk around the farm, move 4 or 5 cones
Yeah.
just to train
And
your
then-
dogs on. Never trained with wild birds.
Didn't even go
No,
need
they're
pen
just-
raised birds.
Nope,
Yeah.
there's just, you walk the little loop and. every
and then
quarter mile
about
is
the
covered in
time we
birds.
started hearing about the eye worms and different things and, pesticides, I'll say this, in this central part of the state, north central, where there's a lot of agriculture,
Yeah.
everybody's cleaned everything up. Herbicides and pesticides are the bane for quail in this part of the state.
Yeah.
You get out there in that country, in those sand hills and the sagebrush, nobody's spraying.
Right.
But there's something, like we've talked about, it's
Habitat.
And one thing,
habitat
habitat and weather, and that's one
and
thing
weather.
And predators.
correlated.
It's called a tipping point.
Tail's got this graph, and he'll share that with you. And it's amazing. Well, I was born in '60, and you hear about everybody talking about 1955 was one of my grandpa was saying that was one of the best quail years. And you can start hearing it all through the 80s and 90s was great.
Great, yeah.
Well, why? And then what happened? Well, you can look at a weather graph,
Right.
and you can just see.
How many years is that? Like from that part of that green to
So-
that part of that green?
What we're looking at, since the
Yeah, since
folks on
it's
the podcast
audio.
aren't really
Yeah.
aren't seeing what we're looking at, but I'm looking at a graph of
Precipitation.
precipitation history from
Yeah.
1895 to 2021. And so, literally, you said 1955. That was at the low point of a drought. And so, in 1955, it started turning around, and so we started getting more rains.
Okay.
You said 80s and 90s. That's an entire period where we were above average, or
Always
today we would
above.
call it an El Nino event. That was
Right.
literally 2 decades long. You were talking about the 2010s or 2011 area. That's right, coincides with a precipitation and rainfall. This is the temperature outlooks of that above normal or below normal. And all of that you can then trace back to like roadside surveys. And there's no one in the country that will argue roadside surveys as a great science. But they do provide a metric of
It's a
that.
barometer of-
Yeah, it's
of some-
of sorts.
Yeah,
It gives
yeah.
us a reference point. And, here we can see some of those same numbers of 2011, 2012 was a low point. In fact, it's one of the lowest recorded populations that we've had.
Yeah.
But that was coming right into an area of
And that's
extreme
not
drought.
because the mailman was really old and hard of
No,
hearing.
that's not. These are all visual based, so it's not
Okay.
going into hearing.
Ron, I'm just gonna tell you, growing up, our mailman and the
Was-
guys that graded our roads,
He was the guy.
they were, hey, they
were
could
the
tell
mail
you where every covey was in this part of the county.
Just because
And
they're out
I'll
the
tell you,
roads
our
getting
old
scratched.
mail carriers, they drive with their windows down. If a bird whistled half a mile away, they didn't miss it.
Really?
I'm just saying, those guys, and now we got all these young mail carriers, hey, they got the rock and roll music turned up and they're,
Listen to some stupid hunting podcast.
but, yeah, but.
Podcasters.
They're podcast.
In Oklahoma and anywhere, it's no secret that quail are what we call an R-selected species. They're a boom bust species. So they're
That's
going to have
R-selected?
Yeah,
That's what that's
so
called.
They're really good at making babies, and those babies are really good at dying. So
Yeah.
they make a whole bunch of them in hopes that some of them survive.
Right.
That's kind of the gist of what R-selected means. But so it's no secret that as we have these rises in temperatures and decreases in temperatures periodically, that's where we see these booms and busts.
Whether we were ever here with a gun or a plow or anything.
Exactly.
It would
I
be
may
like
be
that.
wrong, but, and he'll tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think it was Marcus that told us summer before last, we've had some severe hot, 110.
Extended over 100
extended
degrees.
heat, yeah, and they found, I guess when they went out, and I'm assuming, they had put telemetry on a lot of birds they
Right.
trapped. But when they would go out in after those severe hot weather events, they'd find quite a few abandoned nests. They just couldn't continue to set the nest.
Wow.
It got so hot. And those are a killer, those
Yeah.
are second hatch type.
Right. And you're always hoping for those second,
Yeah.
But is that right, Tail?
But a lot of times you see things like that are mitigated by the good habitat side. So if, for instance, that mama quail had the availability of things like sumac to be able to provide that nest nearby, that's going
Is
to
that
provide a
just a
lot
little
more shade.
shade?
Exactly.
Okay.
So we've been able to find that with especially the sumac species in the shrub level, you can get extreme temperature differences, just like coming inside this barn here.
Yeah.
You know, we're able to get outside of the heat and find a little bit of shade. And the leaf cover that sumac provides gives a lot of that shade.
Right.
I find refuge in it when I'm out bebopping around the fields in the summertime.
And is that something that people always got rid of, or was it a native plant here, or is
So
that?
the native shrubs here in Oklahoma are primarily going to be your sand plum or Chickasaw plum, your sumacs, which we've got fragrant sumac, smooth sumac, wing sumac, as well as things like blackberry, which, you know, kind of has a love-hate relationship with most landowners because it's
Yeah.
real prickly, but blackberries are pretty tasty. But
Yeah.
all three of those would have been native and would have been managed by that prescribed fire we were
Right,
talking about.
right. Was that, did you see more of that when you were a kid here then too?
Sure.
The,
Oh, hey.
You go out to a berry, you knew
I'll
where to
just
go
say
pick up
this. Hey,
blackberries in the
I learned going bird hunting with my grandpa. Hey, we're gonna go hit that patch of sumac over there first.
Okay.
And it's hilarious to listen to how some people pronounce sumac. I've heard shoemate. Rick says shoemate. Go get some. Hey, there's some shoemate, and I'm like, what? What exactly was that? but it is.
And you can understand southern
But
accents.
hey, that's the thing. We talk about introducing these young hunters. You know, it's amazing. We have a friend, young guy, Rance, and he just nonstop. I mean, he's probably a little, but all he talks about is how much he's learned from us, knowing what foods, you know, what to go
Right.
look for, where quail are more likely to be. But it is, you learn that growing up, or if you're hunting with experienced hunters, man, they can tell you right what to look for.
Right.
There's accounts back into even as late or as recent as the 80s of you didn't need a bird dog. You
Yeah.
just go kick a sand plum thicket
Yeah.
and out
You
pops
just knew
up,
where to
got you a
walk.
quail.
Well, hey, they were shaded up and during the day in those plum thickets.
Yeah, that I'd hate to think we didn't need a dog, but I'd like to think that there was enough birds around that you didn't need a dog. I mean, my friends that came from South Dakota, their mom would send them out for some birds. Before dinner, they say, "Well, hey, we need a couple pheasants," and the boys would get in the car and go down the road.
Yeah.
They just knew exactly where to go.
Well,
you know.
I don't mean to hog the
No,
conversation.
this is all about quail
But
and
I'm
quail
just,
hunting.
you're talking about having a dog. And you've asked me about when I was growing up or what it was like when I was young. When I was young, in the town of Minko, I can think of maybe 3 men that didn't have a dog.
Didn't.
Every farmer out here had one dog.
Did it?
I've heard my grandpa tell the story. The first bird dog that anybody in this part of the country saw was in 1937. An old man named Almond Davis owned the lumber yard in town, bought a pointer, and it came in by train from Tennessee, and he paid $15, and everybody thought Almond had lost his mind. Who would spend $15 for a dog? But it wasn't long. Everybody had a dog. My grandpa's bird dog lived in the hay barn. You know, they lived under porches. Everybody in town, Brittany's became popular. Half the town had Brittany's, but everybody quail hunted.
Yeah.
We couldn't, remember, we started off, we could only hunt 3 days a week.
Oh, was that
I
just
didn't
like a
live
blue
at that
law in the
time.
state?
But hey, they added Mondays because the barbers couldn't hunt on the weekends.
The barbers and the post.
The barbers and the postmen, so they added Mondays so that the barbers could all go bird hunting. And then they had more lawyers and stuff
Like most of
became.
those blue laws, they don't make a ton of sense.
Yeah,
but, yeah.
but I'm just saying, at one time, our days were limited that we could hunt. And then one group wanted to hunt, you know, couldn't hunt the barbers and stuff, so they added Monday.
Yeah.
Then you got more lawyers and stuff that wanted to hunt on the weekends. They
Yeah.
couldn't hunt during the week, so they added Sunday. And, you know, but like I said, for your podcast, this was dog heaven. This was dog country, because everybody
great.
had a dog.
Yeah, you wouldn't think of that. I mean, I'm from a culture in Michigan that when I first moved to Michigan, like just about everybody, of course, when you're in a certain circle of friends, you tend to meet more of the same circle of friends, but like everybody was a grouse hunter. And now, you know, we hardly have a Rough Grouse Society chapter anymore. It's so that was that just in the 30s and 40s, or did that stick around?
No, until I would say there's 3 of us that bird hunt in this area now, in
Wow.
this town,
Yeah.
in this or surrounding area. There's 3 of us left.
And it used
And
to
I
be-
would say, but as the old guys died off, the young ones, you know, a lot of the younger, everybody wants instant gratification now, and we got deer. The
Right.
deer started moving in, and all of a sudden, the guys that didn't like to go out and walk much
Right.
became deer hunters.
Right.
And now we're inundated with deer hunters
You know where
and
God went
waterfowlers.
wrong? He should have never put antlers on deers.
Well,
and then we'd have more people caring about birds.
yeah.
Well, we're gonna get quail to grow antlers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, you go to the cafe on a Saturday morning around 10 o'clock when all the waterfowlers are done shooting ducks, and there's a million 15 and 16-year-old kids in their Kuiu gear. Mom and Dad have geared them up,
So
and they
there's-
got all the fanciest decoys. No quail hunters. You know, I go to a cafe in Cheyenne or Woodward, and I'm 59 years old, and I'm the youngest bird hunter in there. There's a problem.
Well, it's not an Oklahoma problem by any
Right.
stretch of the imagination. And I've got a chart pulled up from our game harvest survey that we do with the wildlife department, and I would argue that we started to see that drop off right around the late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
And so at that time, we were estimating about 120,000 hunters in Oklahoma
Yeah.
for quail only.
Yeah.
And again, these are estimates because we don't have a quail license that you have to get.
Right.
But
Part of the small game.
for roughly the last decade or two, we've hovered around 20,000. So, I mean, how many quail hunters have we lost in Oklahoma, let alone nationwide?
And then so often too, like you talk about the small towns, people, you know, they grew up, they could hunt here. Well, then it turns, well, you gotta start driving.
Yeah.
Well, people don't wanna go drive and hunt anymore. Well, if I
Right.
can't just go down the road and hunt, then I'm not going hunting.
Yeah.
With the age of the hunters and then the,
Well, if you Google quail hunter, you're gonna.
They show an old guy with
When
a cane.
Yeah, when I first started,
Yeah, but is it a center or a pointer in the picture?
center.
It's a center in the
center.
It's a center in the picture.
Always a
picked up
center.
most
It's
of
a
the
cock-
short hair pictures for my presentation, but so I mean, if you go and Google it, you're gonna get images like this, and it's a lot of old white guys.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Let's face it, and so we don't have a very diverse group. We're not very good about sharing our spots and taking people hunting. At least we haven't been, but
Right.
you know
Well,
nowadays
and
really-
historically, it was more organic historically.
right? It was.
I mean, there really wasn't a distraction for kids. You know, there was no video games, there was no nothing, and you kind of always wanted to emulate what your dad did. He was so busy, you always wanted to go, and eventually you were old enough to go. And
yeah, you could stay at the house and do chores, or you can go walk around the prairie with that.
And if Grandpa happened to be living close by, your Grandpa might take you out. So I don't think they had to recruit hunters when you were. They didn't have to recruit when. Even growing up where I grew up, you didn't have to recruit any hunters. You know, that wasn't a thing.
And I don't know that it's necessarily recruitment. I think that you hit on it really well of having the availability of the things to do it. You know,
Right.
quail hunting in general is not really an easy thing to get into. And we start looking at all the things that you need.
Yeah.
And then if you have the days you talked about where you put on all those miles all day,
Yep.
you know.
We still do, but
Yeah.
I can tell you, and Tell's exactly right. Now, everybody has to have a three-hole aluminum box with storage and rollaway storage and trailers and the Benelli and Beretta shotguns. You know, I started off with an old wore-out 870 20 gauge,
Yeah.
and my dad helped me build a plywood dog box.
Right.
And I got a canyon full of me and my buddies' old wooden dog boxes up there. Because we had to upgrade. We had to upgrade and get some. And these kids, it's in a lot of hunting, it's expensive
Yeah.
to get in.
Yeah.
And now you got motels included, fuel included, meals included. Used to, we could fall out the back door.
Lack of access,
Yeah.
not knowing where to go. What are other barriers? I'd like to ask the newbie
Yeah.
quail hunter here.
Dr. Watson.
Yeah, so I started.
Well, how old are you, first of all?
I'm 24.
Oh, that's newbie.
Yeah, and I didn't start until the spring of 21. So this
Okay.
is I've been doing it for 2 years.
So you came on during COVID.
I came on during COVID, and I've always been a deer hunter, and so I transferred over from deer hunting and like, you know, I'd been in the
Afraid of
woods.
heights or
sprint
something?
No.
Just checking.
Actually, so I live by myself. I'm in the Army, and I live by myself, and I got the dog. Just, you know, I've always been fascinated with hunting dogs. And then I got the you know, I got a Griffon, and I was like, well, I guess I need to learn how to shoot upland birds. And it's been 2 years, and I've learned a whole lot. But it's just, I generalize it as like just general woodsmanship. There's so much, like, you know, the terrain, the cover.
You've got to be an ecologist to be a good quail hunter.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, to some degree.
Or just have a whole bunch of people around you that know what they're doing. Thank
And
God.
then it rubs off on you.
Hey,
It's like,
let me, Jenny can attest, we'd be out hunting and the phone would ring and it's Watson. Hey, I'm at Optimal. Which end of this place do I need to be hunting?
Man, and if
Hey,
I
I'd
didn't
point
have them, I just...
Still, I'd point him to the west side.
Yeah.
Go around the curve and bail out. And he's like, I found him.
Here's the other one. Hey, Molly got hit by a porcupine.
Yeah.
I don't know what I said.
Yeah.
Pull him out with what?
Oh my gosh! And I you know, I have my girlfriend, and she's telling me you gotta take them. You know, drive 3 hours to the nearest doggy vet. And Jenny's like, relax, it's gonna be fine. He's only got a few in him, pluck them out, and I did, and we kept hunting the rest of the weekend and found some birds, and it was just overall successful.
Growing up in the 70s and 80s, you rarely ran across a porky. It's commonplace now.
Yeah.
It's so commonplace now that not only do you carry a water bottle and shells in your vest, you better have some pliers.
Oh, well,
Yes.
yeah.
I'm not gonna make that mistake again.
Because you could be a mile from the truck, and if your dog's snout's full of quills, you best stop, pull them out.
Hey, our
It's
biggest
gonna
running,
happen.
our biggest running joke is why didn't Noah shut the door to that ark as the porcupines were trying to get on that ramp? Just shut that door.
Sorry,
Don't let 'em
fall.
on there.
And you know, now here's another side of it from a W&A manager. As we were leaving, Laura got blessed to do a deer hunt up there, and she'd killed a deer. So we're leaving this WMA, and a porcupine runs across the road, and it's behind the WMA manager and in front of me, and I kind of roll down the window and like, hey. You know, he's like, come on, leave it alone. So we get back there and they're working on this deer, and I said, like, well, why didn't you dispatch that porcupine? He goes,
It's not
I'll tell you
emergency
what,
vet time,
I
but
have
it's
never
time."
in my life seen a porcupine attack a
Send me
dog.
some of those pictures.
Right.
It's always, they're the most docile animal you're ever gonna find.
I know.
If your dog, which they are inquisitive, they're gonna cross paths.
There's another side of it, and that's that most hunters, when they come across an animal that they don't want to be around, they're going to shoot it. And if your bird dog's there and you shoot it, the bird dog's now associated this shooting of a porcupine with a good thing.
I've known dogs going for the retrieve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the
But-
same with rattlesnakes. That's the
Not
same
pointers
with-
and setters, too.
I haven't
know
killed a lot of
30%
porcupines, but
retrieve.
the ones we've shot were, you see, you're going
already
along, and
shot
all of a
that.
sudden,
They got the
dog
dog.
goes on point in a plum thicket in the hot part of the day.
Yeah.
You know.
2 dogs are backing him, and you're thinking, we got him. You think the quail are shaded up, you
Yeah.
got him.
And you got
And he
him.
stands there, and when that sucker breaks, your heart breaks, because you know it's a porcupine.
I started kicking
They
through
go
it.
in,
I was in
and that's the thing. Usually they'll just hit them, and they don't get it bad.
Right.
But
Some of them.
well,
Some
but,
of them
no,
don't
but what
learn
I'm
to
saying
live by it.
is, after that first time, you can talk to those vets up at Buffalo and around Woodward.
They open up a new wing on the
they
vet
tell
clinic.
you, they'll tell you the first thing, they see the same dogs every year.
Yeah.
They start
They
hunting.
get mad.
We got one
And,
that
and
hates
yeah,
them.
we had one that tried to eat a porcupine litter. They were down his throat,
That's the picture that I
everywhere.
just
It's
showed you.
horrible. And
Yeah.
but Tail's right. People get a little gun happy. You don't want to be if you're shooting and your dog's on birds. All of a sudden, because the minute a shot goes up, those dogs are what's going on. They and so.
Well, I'm not saying by any means not to shoot them, because they are a nuisance animal for the most part. They're not really a good.
In Michigan, they're not
species
even
of
on our game anything.
Right.
The
But-
DNR said it's
It's
not protected. It's
Yeah.
If
just
you've got more than one person
like
out,
English
you can
sparrows.
have somebody take off with the dogs,
Yeah.
you stay behind. I've done it with
I like to come in with a
rattlesnakes
small knife. I grab him by the snout.
I'd love to see that. Can I be a fly on the
Well,
wall?
you gotta have gloves on.
Okay.
Well, hey, you get
Even
a lot
with
of
a
people
glove, I
asking
don't think I'd try
questions, though. Something that we talked about it, and I talked to a couple of old timers. We thought about taking a porcupine, bring him home, like we
Porcupine 'em.
snake break them.
Yeah, same thing.
I'll catch a big
They
old
do it
bull
up
snake.
north.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've had several old guys tell me
raise
that
it.
you're wasting your time. It doesn't work, because you let them go out to that porcupine, hit them with the collar. Snakes it works on. I mean, I'll throw a bull snake out, and them little old pups will get over there, and boy, you buzz them a couple of times, they don't want nothing to do with the snake.
Right.
But, you're trying to think, what can we do to porcupine-proof ourselves? It seems that the versatile dogs seem to be more apt to want to
Oh, yeah.
get on them
Yeah.
than the pointers. But
Anything from east of the Rhine River in Europe.
yeah,
And,
meat
you know,
eaters.
and they would not have bred dogs like that had they had porcupines in Europe.
Yeah.
Because they would have said, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't have such a aggressive dog. Maybe we shouldn't have them kill badgers and boar and stag and
Bears.
bears.
It's okay to kill a bear, but
It's
don't
their
go
fault.
after
They took
porcupine.
short hairs out on boar hunts back in the day. So what do we get? We get anyway. I didn't even know porcupines were a thing down here until I heard you or Rick
And
mention
mostly
it.
it's the western half of the state. Once you get to about Oklahoma City, they're pretty rare in this part of the state.
Yeah. But I mean, in the Dakotas too. That was coming from Michigan. Their porcupines are everywhere. And I remember going to South Dakota for years, never saw one. And all of a sudden, somebody's talking about getting their dog, and I'm like, South Dakota? And I guess they're everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, that's.
Well, there's not really a lot of predators for them, so they're not really a population that's in check.
Except for Wally.
Well, there's
Wally's
Judy
throwing
Baylog's
it.
Weimaraner.
Touche. Well, all the pictures we've seen of. But yeah.
Anyway, so back to quail. We digress, but that's fine. I know in every time I talk with anybody in conservation, it's always habitat, for sure. What are they, or what can be done? Like if you could, we always say, if you could come out of the heavens and wave your hand and say, I want you all to do this.
You know,
as farmers and ranchers, like,
Honestly, it depends on where you're at in Oklahoma. So it seems
And what
like
church
each
they
kind
go
of
to.
I sum that up by saying, leave something for them.
right, and that's if you think about a quail, and this kind of goes into that kind of ecologist conservation mindset of what does a quail need?
yeah.
So is your property providing everything that a quail needs? One of the ways that I kind of liken it is a 3-bedroom house. So imagine you have a 3-bedroom house. Can you live in it? Absolutely. If you've got a wife and a couple kids, as long as you like them, you can coexist in this 3-bedroom house space. What happens if something comes through, and whether it's in your imagination a tornado, a flood, a semi-truck, whatever, comes through and takes out half that house?
Yeah.
So 2 of the bedrooms, half the living room, and the kitchen are unusable. Can you still live there? And the answer is yes, it would be cramped, but
Right.
you've experienced habitat loss. So
Right.
you've experienced red cedar encroachment. You've experienced non-native grasses that are choking out native forbs. You've experienced all of those
Yeah.
things. Now, it's going to be cramped, but you could survive while you're working to improve that
And
habitat.
that's why there still are quail.
Exactly.
But,
So now what happens if the roof starts leaking in your master bedroom?
well, the kids are going to have to go out of their room.
Right, so you're probably, well, no, because their bedroom's been taken up by cedars.
Oh, we lost the kids already.
Yeah, so, no, they're having to sleep on your bedroom floor in the master bedroom, so.
We're
but-
moving to Oklahoma, where there's a drought.
Right, but so if the roof starts leaking there, now you're gonna have to move out. You've had to leave your home because of a leaky roof, but really the leaky roof wasn't the problem, it was the habitat loss, taking
Yeah.
up half your house. So
Yeah.
if I had $1 million and one thing that I could do, I would cut down as many eastern red cedars in the state as I could. If I had
There's
some
one
money
answer.
left over, I would work on native, we a lot of times think of native grasses, but really it's the native plant community. So really those forbs or those weeds are
Right.
one of the best things that are out there. You know, this time of year, springtime, things are greening up, but one of the first things that a quail's gonna go after in the spring is a dandelion.
Right.
And it's not the full dandelion and the yellow flower that we're thinking about it. It's
green.
when it's a 1-inch rosette. So
Yeah.
those late season birds that you're harvesting that have that leafy material in their crop, it's dandelion greens.
Yeah.
Full of vitamins and nutrients and antioxidants that are good for them.
Yeah.
It's also a ton of water. But if we're going in and we're spraying it with God knows what 3 times a year, those dandelions aren't there.
Right.
And they can't eat grass. It's not going to do much for them. So
And no bugs.
and no bugs. So if you've got those weeds, though, you've got the seeds that are going to carry them through the winter. You've got the flowers that are going to attract in the bugs that are going to give them the food all summer. And really, you've kind of fixed the system.
Yeah.
So I would,
Could we, we're gonna go down way, we might make this no, we're good. I was gonna say, we might get into a 2-parter.
Oh.
But we're not even close.
don't get me on that soapbox.
Could we, and I mean, if you're a rancher, Dave, I mean, your family's been out here ranching and farming. Could you get by with less pesticides or less spraying?
Yeah,
Or I mean,
The
I
only-
shouldn't say you, but I mean,
the only pesticides used in this area are for alfalfa, aphids, and, weevils. You know, it used to be dairies. We had 17 dairies just here around, I dairied. We had 17 dairies in this area, and alfalfa is in Wisconsin, any part of the country, alfalfa is a critical part of your ration.
Yeah.
And you have to spray.
Yeah.
The thing that's changed around here, we could get by with less herbicides. There's people that do it.
Yeah.
The thing is, everybody wants more tonnage. You know,
Right.
and the improved grasses have changed the way the amount of herbicide that's being used.
Yeah.
We didn't used to have to spray these native grass pastures. You know, the grasses, you had ragweed and mixed, like you talked about, mixed forbs, but these prairies had, I'm not gonna say a million years, but a lot of years to where they survived
Right.
and thrived.
They had a balance.
Now,
of
you've got
even
Bermuda,
bugs
yeah.
that ate other bugs.
Exactly, yeah. You
Yeah,
had
but-
a full ecosystem.
Yeah,
Everywhere you
and
looked.
I'll say this, you know, putting a lot of the CRP program was an incredible part of conservation, but the grasses that they pushed us to go to, the plains blue stem, provides no benefit for any wildlife that I know, other than in the summer, if you have rain, and they like it when it's green.
Yeah.
You know, the cattle will graze on native grasses through the winter. That plains, they don't like it. It's a sour or something. Bermuda grass is another. Bermuda grass has spread everywhere.
Our whole
People
state.
sprig it everywhere. You have to fertilize it. You have to spray it to make enough production to pay, because it's an expensive grass. So, getting back to, I've got those places where I have birds, I don't spray.
Right.
Herbicides. Now, 2 years ago, because of back in the day when they pushed, my great granddad's planted a lot of Lespedeza because it was a soil builder. Okay? But it's a woody legume that cattle won't touch, nothing.
And produces about 5,000 seeds a plant.
Yeah.
Can't digest.
Yeah, it's terrible. And so, well, I did spray. You have to spray it in August to kill it. You wait till it blooms. And I sprayed it 2 years in a row. Had an airplane spray it. And I didn't realize it at the time, but the spray really burnt the sand plums back.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Now, what I benefited from, but I had a lot of sand plums on that place. And they're starting to come back.
Right.
But it certainly didn't benefit those quail for 2 years.
Right.
Side effects.
I'm just saying, no, it burnt every leaf off of every sand plum.
And we've got examples of that kind of across the board, and it's not necessarily people meaning to do harm or wanting to do something bad. It's kind of this generational mindset. You can almost call it a generational trauma if you wanted to go
It's almost the
down
way
that rabbit
cars change every 10 years. You know,
Right,
it's like,
but-
we got some new ideas. Let's try this.
You know, we were talking earlier about
And
you
now
know,
our
inheriting
thing
the
tells us the air pressure's on and it's not wrong with my air light.
Well, it's like the owner's manual used to teach you how to adjust the actual carburetor. And Now
Right.
it's like don't drink the gas.
Right.
You know, it's,
Yeah.
different times. But,
Yeah, go ahead.
but if we have like someone inherits a farm, granddaddy used to run 100 head of cattle on this place, so by golly, I'm going to run 100 head. But now they've dealt with 3 years of drought, and so that alone they need to reduce their stocking rate. Or half the property's covered with eastern red cedars or Sericea lespedeza or Johnson grass or you name it, that has changed how much actual pounds of grazable forage are on this property. So they kind of have this blind eye, and I'll liken it to a puppy. If you leave for a couple weeks and you come home and you get back to your puppy, it's like tripled in size. But if you had been there the whole time, you wouldn't have noticed it growing.
Yeah.
But now you've got this problem on your hands. So your puppy's grown and you missed out on the little cute stage, and now you've got well, if it's me, an 80-pound short hair. But that's a different debacle. But you know, we've lose touch with why we do these things. I went out and worked with a private landowner, and he had just got off his tractor with the 12-foot booms out, and I said, "Man, what have you been spraying?" He said, "Oh, I've been spraying my entire fields. I'm trying to get rid of this crap." I'm like, "What kind of crap are we getting rid of?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, I'll show you." And we hop in the truck and we're driving around. He says, "This stuff, I hate it. It makes me sneeze." I'm like, "Well, that's ragweed. That's western ragweed. That's one of the #1 quail food sources in Oklahoma." "Oh, well, what else are you trying to get rid of?" And he goes around. He says, "This one, I hate it. My cows won't eat it." I'm like, that's a milkweed. That's actually one of the most critical plants for monarch butterflies." "Oh," I'm like, "So where'd all the quail go?" You've killed off the weeds that produce
Yeah.
the seeds they need all winter, and you've killed off the plants that attract in the insects that they need all summer. I think we found your problem.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, in his mind, all of his neighbors are using
Yeah.
chemicals to be able to deal with XYZ. And by no means am I trying to say that chemicals are the problem. It's how we're utilizing those chemicals.
Yeah.
Every chemical has a use and an application, and I preach to use them all the time, but it's using them for what they're needed, on what they're needed
Yeah.
to achieve what you're wanting to accomplish.
And is there another, I mean, pheasants, of course, it's an introduced species. There was no other quail type bird here, just the two species?
Yep.
There's no,
So we do have prairie chickens.
that's what I think, that's where I was going. I thought you said at some point, so is it Panhandle, is that more, I want to say
Actually,
Kansas like?
we saw some up there north Ponca City when we went up to, what's the lake up
Generally,
there?
kind of the northern part of Northwest is
Yeah,
where we
over
have
east
lesser
of
prairie
Collins
chickens.
also.
Okay.
And then in the remnants of the tall grass prairie up in northeastern Oklahoma, we also have the greater prairie chickens.
Okay. Are they open up there at all?
No, so we are completely closed to harvest of chickens here in Oklahoma.
Okay. I know the Lessers have been closed for a
Yeah.
long time.
And that's Rhode Island Reds too. I'm just kidding. And Leghorns and whatever.
I like Dominickers.
There you go.
So that would have been and then how about Sharptails? Did they ever wander down here, or do we know?
It's rumored that we probably had another grouse species at some type
More
in
like it was the
Oklahoma's
prairie
history, but most likely we're looking at the greater and lesser prairie chickens.
Will, and this is because I don't know this area, will you find prairie chickens and quail in close proximity?
Without a doubt, usually. And
I mean, if
kind of-
they're in a good area.
Right,
Yeah.
and usually it comes down to, here in Oklahoma, you've got these patches that are really good for chickens, and you've got patches that are much better for quail.
Right.
And so with chickens, a lot of times, you lose them out if you're getting a lot of vertical structure. Quail will still persist in some of that stuff, especially
Right.
this kind of early successional tree encroachment. Where the chickens would have already been out.
They're out, yeah.
But if you're out listening for a lek survey like I was doing last week, it's not uncommon to hear some
To
quail.
hear
while
quail,
you're out
okay,
there.
so they can coexist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever get to hunt them back in the day here, David?
We actually had, my dad can remember when he was young, there were chickens in this area.
Was there?
Yeah,
And
they
everybody
would've
hunted them. Hey, everybody, I mean, but they hunted quail, they hunted chickens. You know, hey, you go out and, they were killing them to eat. I mean,
Right.
they didn't go hunting. There wasn't
No grip and
there wasn't
grin.
no preserves where you went out and shot 200 birds and
Right,
took
right.
pictures to post. I mean,
Yeah.
they'd go out and kill a couple of those, kill a few quail,
Yeah.
had a mess for
No.
dinner, but I don't know when they were gone.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't remember 'em.
Right.
And
I,
not that old.
I think
Come
about
on now,
Michigan. You're not. You're 6 years younger than me.
We did have a hunting forum.
You
up
are
in,
young.
Through the 80s. I've got, hunting reg copies from the late 80s that have
Right.
That had 'em in
prairie
there,
chicken
yeah.
regulations in them.
yeah.
Jenny, are you born and bred in Minnesota?
Yes.
So we're the only Yankees here, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever like?
Yeah.
We,
Yeah.
oh, we're gonna go over by the bar, eh? And yeah,
Yep.
we'll go over there. Did you?
I haven't heard one ope. I'll just throw that out.
Or oofda.
I was.
I haven't talked yet.
I was always guilty of just going somewhere and going hunting, and not paying attention. But especially since having the podcast, talking to biologists and talking to, the conversations turned more toward habitat. But what was it like in Minnesota where you grew up? Because I always think of like the woods, nothing changes, but that's actually bad for the woods when nothing changes. Where here you want breakup, you want fire, you want all kinds.
Edge.
Yeah,
Edge is the best way
But
to
I
think
never
about
paid attention to it. Did you pay attention to it in Minnesota?
No, I mean, I grew up in a farming community. We grew up with horses and, lived on a dirt road and rode our horses everywhere, and it was farmland. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we were always, we knew where there was pheasants because the pheasants sweep the horses.
Yeah.
So, all the edges that we talk about, always around water, always around swamps, cattails, dirt roads in the evenings. And, I didn't look for it, but I knew what to look for. When
Yeah.
you're riding a young horse, it's not very fun when the pheasants come exploding out of the
Scares
cattails.
us, let alone a horse.
Right, so I paid attention to that, and obviously, ducks and whatnot, but we don't have quail, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I always think of
I
like,
didn't grow up in a grouse area.
right, and the droughts were never a thing. Like we never, I'm
No.
sure there was a drought somewhere in the upper Midwest,
Right.
but it's just not a
Not
thing.
common,
you
no,
know?
it's a very humid.
So if we could up in the upper Midwest, if we could control the habitat, we almost don't have to worry about the weather.
Correct.
It's almost just a
Yeah.
thing. The snow helps them.
Yep.
And I mean, they just don't have a problem where
And there's
you guys are always
always
balancing on
protection.
you always got, besides all the other stuff, you always got the weather hanging over your head. It's like a sword of Damocles here.
Well, it is. Hey, my I had an uncle, and he put this, and the Jenny's heard me use this analogy, but he put it great one time. He said, you know, when the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness, it had to have been an incredible weather that they had because God fed the Israelites on quail and manna for 40 years. He said the weather must have been awesome.
Well, but you also got to take into account that time it rained 40 days and 40 nights.
yeah.
Look, got a quarter inch.
Yeah.
What is this, our
So this is rainfall that I pulled up just to kind of give you a familiarization with Oklahoma, and this kind of also plays into that diversity we were talking about.
Yeah.
In Minnesota, you would be fairly similar to the rainfalls in here, but the entire state of Minnesota is basically the same amount of rainfall.
Right, exactly.
But I mean, here it's like a rainbow across the
You've
state.
got 1,
of
2, 3, 4, 6 different
6 color
ranges
gradients, yeah.
of that's crazy.
Yeah.
And alligators.
And alligators in the far
which
south.
I'm still calling bullshit on. But you went to college here.
I've got some
They're
pictures
there.
that I'll show you of me with some gators.
I mean, if I was in a bar and somebody was telling a story about wrestling an alligator in Oklahoma, I'm like, oh, this guy's in for it. This guy, he did not.
Hey, if I'm not mistaken, they down by LA,
Yeah, we
down the
just had
Washita
one.
River.
Yeah.
They came up after the
That's what I
hurricane
heard,
in
and I was like-
Louisiana.
I thought, I'm like, either I didn't pay attention in geography or he's full of it.
Hey, some people call those carp. I'm just kidding.
Let's see here. Back in my old green jean days, I've got some gator pictures here. I'll find for you.
Well, you find a gator picture. We're gonna play with dog. Oh, that's a little friendly one. Is that your aquarium?
That was me like 30 pounds ago. That
You
is
didn't even have any
a.
whiskers.
I know. Well, I couldn't because I was a game warden at the time, so I couldn't grow any whiskers. They also weren't gray back then. But no, that's out of a wild creek here in Oklahoma.
That is kind of. I'm not saying I can't believe. I obviously believe it. I would have lost a lot of money in a bar bet on
Well,
that.
and I will throw out, if you're coming to Oklahoma to quail hunt, if you run into an alligator, you're in the wrong spot for quail hunt. Yeah, they're not in the same, there's not a lot of overlap like we were talking
So
about.
if you have that, whatever
You are
that
lost.
phobia is of reptiles, don't be afraid to come to Oklahoma.
Well, I mean, we've got a fair share of other reptiles,
Right,
but for gators
right.
specifically, you should
See,
be.
we never had to worry about that up north either. Snakes, that wasn't the thing we worried about.
No snakes, no gators.
Lori, what's your story with the dog world? I know so many women in the dog world started with horses, and it sounds like I just met another one.
Yep.
Where did the dogs come in?
We always had, on the farm, I think we had 9 dogs at once. We always had dogs that go with us. They're farm dogs, you know, the dogs that lived outside and the dogs inside. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a real dog-friendly state. Everybody does stuff in the wintertime.
So it
you
wasn't
know.
a hunting thing, it was just a dog
No,
thing?
it was just a dog thing.
Yeah.
And being in school, we were in a farming community and there's a lot of horses. And so there's the 4-H. We didn't have like ag like they do down here. But so 4-H, one of your classes is you take your dog
Show
to
'em.
obedience. And
Oh, okay.
so, you know, you want to do something with the dogs in the wintertime, you take them to, you know, Mom, you drop you off at Obedience Academy with all the house dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Was that for your obedience or the dog?
That was right after ski school.
Another thing we didn't
Yeah, I told her, I said, ski school, what is ski
Cross-country,
school?
She got home from Breckenridge.
Or snowshoe.
So, you
We
know,
saw the sleds in the barn, so we know it's legit.
Yep, you find stuff to do with dogs. So you go,
Yeah.
people, you know, shorters are real popular. up
No,
there.
that's
They
not ski journing, that's on skis with a dog. You
Yeah.
were regular dog sledding.
Yeah, I was dog sledding.
Did you do that with any of your bird dogs?
Oh, well,
This is
one of my
pre-bird
best old sled dogs I had was, I got her out of Alaska, but the guy's from Minnesota. She was a quarter English pointer.
Yeah.
She ran the Iditarod twice, top 10 finishes 2 times.
Really?
Yeah. Quarter English pointer. And she throws her tail off, so her tail was only about 8 inches long.
poor baby.
Yeah, so.
She said when it really got bad is when that dog would turn on point and they were all forward.
The tip snapped off.
It froze off. That poor
Set
old-
so hard on point. Good dog. I don't know, it's crazy.
So your dog journey went from sled dogs.
Yep, sled
to-
dogs and bird dogs. I think my first bird dog I got in 2099. I got a yellow lab for hunting because we pheasant hunted once, and I'm like, you know, they had their dogs. I'm like, I want my own dog because I already had dogs. You know,
Right.
I had pets, so I got a lab, and then I picked up a short hair and a Brittany and a setter. just like right away.
Couldn't make up your mind, or is this just this overachieving
I just
thing?
overachieved.
There weren't any Munsterlanders available.
I had enough money to buy my Munsterlander. I did. I had my Munsterlander.
How many breeds have you had already? Because everything I'm
All
seeing
of
out there looks like
My
setters.
setters have always been my favorites, but I mean, and I'm partial to the short hairs. So I have one short hair. She's just up at the other kennel now. But no,
Yeah.
I've always loved the setters. They're versatile enough for me to be a house dog. I love the hair. I think they're pretty. They're so sweet. They have sad eyes. They're classical.
Yeah. And you came from the Llewellyn side of things,
Yeah.
mostly.
Yeah, well, I think my first ones I had English, and then I had an awesome Llewellyn. I only got to have her like 8.5 years, but in the midst of that, I had a couple more Llewellyns and then a couple English. And you know, as dogs, you go through your 15-year range. Those dogs have all passed, and I
Yeah.
started back with a couple different bred type Llewellyns and picked up some English setters again because they have a
That's
lot
just
more
your
motor
thing.
than the Llewellyns. Yeah.
You guys love the motors, the motors.
Well, if I'm going to hunt with David and he has pointers, my Llewellyns are awesome in lots of places, but the pointers are always further out, and so the English setters complement the pointers better. They hunt together, where the Llewellyns were.
The Llewellyns were getting too much backing practice. Let's just say that, yeah.
I guess that's a good way that everybody
Yeah.
could understand.
And I have a couple really good ones that I've bred, like yours, and then the Reese, the one you put the bumper in,
Oh,
the chestnut one.
The one I couldn't put the bumper in.
No,
that
no,
was
you
Reese.
got the
He was
bumper.
that was Rooster.
Yeah, Reese is the one you got the bumper in.
Oh.
And, he's a Llewellyn, and he's you could mistake him for a pointer. So it's taken some time to change the type of Llewellyns I had to the ones that work
Yeah.
for hunting here.
Yeah.
So along with the English setters and the Llewellyns,
How long have you been in Oklahoma?
24 years.
That's a haul.
Yeah.
It's amazing she kept that accent for 24 years, isn't it?
None of yours rubbed off, I can tell you
Oh
that.
my gosh.
Hey,
You have to have, you have to have a
Oh,
dip
you
into
should
something
Hey,
like
you
that.
should hear her speak Spanish with the Minnesota accent. That's what's awesome. And she's fluent. Those Mexicans are all over there saying, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
see,
hear
yeah.
Laura, you've been on the podcast before, but because we talked to you and Rick and I, you've got Brittany's.
We do, yes.
Lifelonger? It seems like you've been a lifelonger Brittany.
No, I was introduced to bird hunting when I moved to Oklahoma in 2003.
Okay.
And so that was my first exposure, which, to be frank with you, that is why I fell in love with bird hunting, was because of the dogs.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and then the love of nature and outdoors, and then eventually the conservation side, and all of that fell into place right along.
But you
with
haven't
it.
tried 7 breeds yet.
No, I grew up with English bulldogs. So they weren't bird dogs.
And I'll put you in touch with the other podcast that we do.
But no, I love the Brittany's are something that I absolutely love. They're real versatile in a lot of different. If you've got good ones, I'm going to say that.
That's what every dog. You gotta have good
Yeah,
one.
you got to have
Gotta
good ones. But I fell in love with the Brittany just because they're so super. I don't know. They're fairly easy to train. They're fairly sensitive, so you don't have to have a hard hand
Yeah.
on them. And they're just great family dogs too.
Yeah.
So they go from being a love bug on the couch and out to the field going, this is all business, don't touch me, I'm going to hunt now.
Yeah.
And I can't wait, and don't bother me,
I
so.
would think you guys would be doing rain dances here just to get some rain. I would do.
Oh, we try.
Hey, there's things being done that we can't talk about that people trying to get right.
Were those balloons that were going over
Hey.
last month?
Yeah.
Thought they were spy balloons.
Well, from what we understand and tell, but from my understanding, we're actually in a worse drought than what occurred during the Dust
That's
Bowl
what
days.
Rick was telling me on the way up here.
And,
That's hard. But I mean, the
people- well,
statistics
it's-
would prove it, right?
Yeah, and I don't know the exact specifics on, I wasn't around in the time,
Right.
so I don't know the Dust Bowl
Or the
specifics.
peak
but
of the Dust Bowl year, but
Yeah.
In the 30s.
I've got a map pulled up here from October, so, as we're going right into quail season last year, or prepping to go into quail season, 100% of the state was at least severe drought.
yeah.
I mean, that paints a picture, and
Right.
if we go to just this last one that came out on March 28th through the drought monitor, basically the northwest half of the state is in that same level
Still
of
at
drought.
that same level.
With almost the entire panhandle in that D4 drought condition. That's as bad as it gets. So we're definitely hurting. But, the good news is, and it's always weird to talk about ocean temperatures when we're in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I wanted you to touch on that. Yeah.
I've got a little GIF here that's put out by NOAA, and this actually just came out this last week. And so where we're looking this is Hawaii. This would be the southern half or southern tip of Mexico all the way to Indonesia, Galapagos Islands. But this little triangle in here, or a little square, circle, whatever shape you want to use, you'll kind of see it start to turn red. And that means that those ocean temperatures are getting warmer than normal. So where we've been in an El Nino or a La Nina the last 3 years, that cooler and drier weather conditions, we're now settling into a normal weather pattern. And I had the little rabbit ear quotes going for everybody listening.
Yeah.
And now we're expecting to go back into that El Nino shift as summer starts to build.
And just for my head, El Nino is when the water cools.
So El Nino
when it-
is when the ocean gets warmer.
Okay.
La Nina
And we're only
being-
talking a few degrees, but
Yeah,
that makes
so
a
the scale
difference.
is 10 degrees Celsius.
Is that a good sign?
Yeah.
I got mixed when you said we're going back to an El Nino. I'm like, oh
No,
no.
El Nino's good. So El Nino,
Good.
we typically have warmer and wetter.
Okay.
And so when
Something's
we
good.
start looking at those boom years,
Yeah.
we're starting to see that, those
So
warmer,
can you
wetter
trace
years.
that back with those, not today on this thing, but if you studied El Nino and El Nina, whatever, I think.
La Nina.
La Nina.
Yeah.
Would you also see that correlation to drought in the country? Or do we know?
Yes, it's going to be. It wouldn't necessarily. It's kind of like when we talk about climate change. Like climate change is not just a one blanket thing for
Right.
everybody. Like
Polar
parts are gonna
bears
get
aren't in
cooler.
Minnesota yet.
Exactly. Areas are going to get cooler. Areas are going to get warmer. And as this graph shows, that's natural to some degree. But as we start to see that, like here in Oklahoma, I expect we could absolutely plot that out and see when those drought conditions were versus when was El Nino, when was La Nina.
Yeah. Well, that sounds exciting. It's like the best news
Yes,
ever.
we're super excited.
When there's a huge block party because you got 3/10 of an inch of rain, you're kind of in a bind. I mean, from September till 1st of March, we had less than 3/4 of an inch just here.
Yeah.
And we have a mesonet station up here, and it doesn't always read what ours rain gauges and stuff read. But, there was wheat that wasn't planted until 1st of December around here. It's always in by the first week or two of September.
Wow.
We were literally just powder, and you've been Northwest, up around Supply and up in that country, those poor people didn't plant wheat until December. It came up, and a lot of it was already turning yellow and dying by late in January. And we bemoan our
Shortest we've ever
situation,
seen.
but it's even worse for them,
And then can the quails, I mean, like in this map, we're looking at that D4
Yeah.
drought. That means like no rain for months on end, basically.
It's real bad.
Real bad.
I mean, as far as the how bad a drought can be, as far as graphically, that's as bad as it gets.
Right. Anything else has horns and fire.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. You got to go downstairs for a while to get.
Would there still be a pocket in here, not that got rain, but that would be wet enough, riparian enough that there'll still be some seed quail there, or will that just wipe out? I know it's not going to be good for nesting. The chicks couldn't survive it, and
Right.
the bugs wouldn't be there to feed the chicks and all that.
There are still quail even in this D4 drought.
That's what I was
condition.
getting at.
Yeah. So and it's not great for them, but the good news is if you don't like the weather in Oklahoma, wait a few minutes, it'll change.
Right.
That's the famous quote, right? But within these, you're going to have patches where your agriculture wasn't able to get into the ground. So if it was wheat that those quail were eating,
No.
probably not going to have much luck on that.
Yeah.
If it's areas where we've been grazing for the last 3 years without adjusting our stocking rate, we've overgrazed those pastures. We're starting to overutilize them, so there's not enough resource there. But if we go out to like our wildlife management areas that are out there, you can find quail. Because
Right.
we've been adjusting those amounts over the last 3 years.
So
throughout
they
this
can
drought.
literally live without rain. They can get their moisture from everything
So-
they eat.
Realistically looking here in Oklahoma, we don't see quail go to water all that often.
Okay.
So during this drought period, we've absolutely seen pictures of quail going to water because the water's not out there. But
Yeah.
traditionally, they're going to get most of their water from those weeds and those insects and even the seeds. Like
Right.
you can take the seed of like a croton plant, whether it's woolly or tropical or whatever, and crush it between your fingernails or in some vice grips, and it'll almost squirt out with water. There's so much
Wow.
oil and water that are in those seeds. So there's other ways for those birds to find those nutrients, even in those drought conditions.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm going to point out too that if you remember back in the Dust Bowl years, there was no quail, there was no wildlife hardly at all. And that is where the crux and the start of real conservation measures were put into place. And because of those conservation measures, over the few however many decades, now almost 100 years, good Lord. So,
But that's when we see the onset of National Park Service, the
Right.
wildlife refuge systems,
Right.
building of wildlife management areas, state wildlife management areas taking off. And so you started to see this, I don't want to say ownership, but someone taking the lead.
Right.
All the way up into Teddy Roosevelt, trying to take a stand, and Gifford
Right.
Pinchot,
The
and
CCC,
Aldo Leopold,
WPA.
and all of those.
Yeah.
Go out, Ron, we've all been out there, the shelter belts. The amount of shelter belts that were planted in western
That's true.
Oklahoma is mind-boggling.
That was-
The amount of people that went along and planted those
And
trees, and
Kansas.
they're still standing.
Yeah.
In Roger Mills County, there's freaking shelter belts everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're great.
Eastern red cedars. And
Yeah, well, yeah, but I'm talking about they planted, I don't know if they were some type of a native elm, whatever those were, there's a lot of black locust too that have mixed in, but those old tree lines, they're still there.
Yeah.
When the elms were recommended to plant because they were fast growing, straight growing, and had very few branches coming
Right.
off of them, so within about 4 years, you had a great crop of fence posts.
Yeah.
And then T-posts came around, and we didn't chop the elms down, and now we've got these stands of
Yeah.
elm that aren't doing much. good.
Right.
Once again, we introduced the mongoose and the cat to the light.
But hey, when the whole country's blown away, those
Yeah.
people were desperate
Oh,
to
yeah.
try to start. That's why the love grass. I mean, nobody,
we
all
learned some
hate it.
lessons along the way.
But like I said, you love grass to get rid of, you can't kill it, you
gotta
can't
use the
spray,
chemical.
you've got to farm it to kill it.
Yeah.
And you got to farm it for 3 or 4 years. But like I said, they were trying.
Yeah. Well,
They were trying.
And there was also at the time almost some misinformation, I won't call it disinformation, but we want to stabilize the soil, so we need to plant these introduced grasses.
Yeah.
But realistically, if they would have planted native grasses whose roots can go 10 feet underground,
Yeah.
if you got your truck stuck and there was a way to wrap a chain to Little Blue Stem, it could pull you up a sheer cliff.
Right.
I'm not even joking, because those root systems go 10 feet underground until they find the water that they need. And that's why those prairies were so hardy.
They
when we
survived
settled.
through the El Nino.
They could reach
As a
water.
rancher, I can just tell you, in these dry years, our native pastures have held tough.
Yeah.
And we don't overgraze them, but they've maintained. Where we have plains blue stem, we've had fields where half to 2/3, finally, it went dormant, then it just died.
Yeah.
From the drought. A lot of Bermuda, same thing. I mean, it just curls up and goes into the fetal position.
Well, that's
Where the native grasses,
plains,
the
King's
native
Ranch,
grasses,
the
yeah.
They
Caucasian blue
make
stem,
it-
kind of that whole.
Yeah.
They evolved there and they.
But
They
well,
make it.
that's it. They evolved. They've been through all this before.
When we were talking fire earlier, that's the other side of the native plants, is that they evolved with fire. They grew up with it. So things like sand plum, sumac, blackberry for the shrub species, but all those native forbs are native.
Shin oak.
So they're gonna,
Shinnery.
and shinnery oak, yes.
They'll
let's
come
forget
back,
about that one.
yeah.
They'll come right back with it. Now, they might be offset a year, where they're
Yeah.
delayed a year or what have you, but, we also see a lot of plants that are dependent on fire. In the Northwest, we hear about the pines that won't be able to resprout if they don't burn the pine cones.
Yeah.
We've actually, there's a reference example down on our Cross Timbers Wildlife Management Area, which is down in south central Oklahoma. We were out doing a landowner field day a few years ago and found a wild orchid, which, I didn't do so well in field botany, I'll be the first to say. I was blown away that we
Would
had
you
a
say,
native
look at the
orchid.
pretty flower?
No, I said, what is that? Because I've never seen
Spray
anything
it.
like that. Kill that weed! No.
Hit that with some 2,4-D.
Glyphosate you put on that? What is it? But the little things like that. And the only reason that orchid was growing there was a species of ladies' tresses. The only reason it was there is because the grazing was done at a proper rate, and the prescribed fire was being used, and that allowed that to grow. So, if we can have things like that, and I would gamble that species hadn't been present on that property for 2 decades.
Yeah.
Where'd it come from? Well, the seed bank. It was still intact and viable. That as soon as it was given an opportunity, it was able to go crazy and
Yeah.
flower and produce more orchids down the road.
So, and that's really where we come back to, if we want to save these species, any species, plant or animal, it doesn't
We
really matter.
gotta save them all. We can't just
Yes.
pick one out.
Yeah, exactly. That's why our types of organizations like Quail Forever, Pheasants Forever, Ruffed Grouse Society, all of us have to work together and keep educating and outreaching and teaching people, because it's the teaching part of this. How you didn't know these plants, you didn't know.
Oh, I still don't.
You know, and
Yeah,
you'll
there's not-
continue to
didn't-
learn for a long time, but we have a room full of people here, you know, they don't know what quail plants are, which ones are better, which ones to go look for. I know when I first moved here, I couldn't tell you what was gonna be good quail country. James was a great teacher teaching me, and then I started going to all the workshops and learning about it,
Right.
and now, and that's where I put the hope and making sure that we continue doing these types of things so that we keep teaching everybody as we go along, just
You know,
paying
we
it
were
forward.
talking earlier about, you know, Rick was talking about trying to do all these projects with the kids, teach them to hunt, teach them to shoot, teach them to, maybe it should be teach them botany.
We do try to
serious.
teach
How about
them
like a
along the
series
way.
of botany?
I would go to
Yes.
that. I would go to that because a lot of this stuff, you know, I hear people talking about it, and I listen to a lot of podcasts. I hear people saying, like, I know a lot of the names, but until you're out there in the woods and someone says, "Hey, Watson, look right there. That is what ragweed is."
Right.
And you see it in its native habitat. Like, I feel like it
I
just
saw two
all
guys this
clicks.
year hunting with me. They were both younger, and they took their phone out with that Apple ID.
Oh, yeah.
And we found, you know, I was calling silverberry the wrong bush, and I was calling buffaloberry, and we got it ID'd on there. So I mean, there's some interest in there, but it's just gotta quadruple.
And that ID will also work on dogs, Ron.
Not on my new breed, it won't.
Probably not that.
Or your new breed.
My new breed.
It's gonna go like.
What's this?
Undetermined, undefined.
DNA
Well,
test
so-
required.
With that, you know, the wildlife department here in Oklahoma, we got together with Oklahoma State University a few years ago and put together, it's uploading, there's, only got like one bar on my Wi-Fi, but it's a guide to plants important for quail. And that's available on our website. It's basically a field guide that shows you the seeds, so that when you bust a crop open on your bird, you can figure out what
Yep.
seeds they're eating. But pictures of the plants, pictures of their flowers, and how quail utilize it. But you're absolutely right, Apple ID, iNaturalist, PlantNet, all of these things that we literally can take a picture of nowadays.
Yeah.
And as a biologist, I can look super, super smart when I'm out with a landowner and I sneak off and take a picture of the plant they were asking me
You
about.
have some
And-
buffalo antler on.
Yeah, that's and it's got
berries.
the scientific name. I can sound super smart. It's a great thing. But you know, with that, and Laura hit it exactly on the head. One of the main things to remember is this isn't a quail issue. This is a nationwide bird
Quail
issue.
just happens to be what we in love with because we're in love with our
Barometer.
dogs.
But, you know, if we go
Yeah.
back to some of the work that the Cornell Bird Lab put out, that since 1970, we've lost 2.9 billion birds. 1 in 4 birds is gone since 1970.
Yeah.
720 million grassland birds. Fun fact, that stat didn't involve quail, because they have it as a shrub obligate species, as it should be. So the grassland bird
Right.
stat there doesn't even involve quail. So it's.
Hey,
it's-
think where we'd be if they hadn't brought those pheasant over from China and introduced them in Washington and Oregon. I'm just saying, take the pheasant out of the entire hunting population. South Dakota would be a wasteland. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Mitchell, it'd be a mini stop, a gas
It would only
station.
have one strip.
Yeah, that's right.
Same one it had when the wagons went through.
Yeah. Yeah, and it'd probably be a portable one. But, I'm just saying, I've been there twice, and there were all these temporary buildings put up for stuff. What is this? What is this? These darn Dakotans.
It's a carnival.
Hey, but when we were up there, they were laughing at my pointers until we hit the field, and then they just want to know if they could hunt behind them pointers a little bit. So, yeah, the quail dogs.
Imagine if they saw a setter. Oh my
know.
God.
Yeah,
But that plays well into kind of what you were saying, Laura, of the different organizations that are out there, whatever NGO you're operating under, a lot of them are doing the same things. Like here in Oklahoma with Turkey Federation, with Quail Forever, Pheasants Forever, but even to the point of Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation or Trout Unlimited, they all agree that eastern red cedars are bad.
Yeah.
We're all kind of trying to achieve the same things, and at
Yeah,
that
whereas
point,
10 years ago, that wasn't a conversation.
Exactly. You
So
know,
at least,
oh, this is
if
this
that's
is our
the
thing.
like for me to know and say that, boy, isn't Cedars bad? Like, I wouldn't have known that 5 years ago.
Right.
So maybe there's a message that is bleeding through.
well, hey, in this kind, we're so progressive. Think of all the bad species or unwanted species that we've introduced in this country.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Johnson grass. Is there a bar ditch in America that's not full of Johnson grass? It's not native.
Yeah.
You know, you don't see it in the pastures because the cattle kill it out. But it's the cedars. I mean, my grandpa, he never saw a cedar when he was a
Right,
kid.
just
There wasn't a
one-
cedar in this country.
Buffalo-
weren't many
Buffalo
trees.
just left.
Well, there weren't many trees, yeah.
Right,
They had to ship fence posts in by rail.
Right.
So,
They got burned regularly too.
yeah.
I mean, where we're sitting right now is historical Great Plains. I mean, that's the eco-region. that we-
Right.
Well, it's a fire eco-region.
Exactly, and it's fire dependent.
Like yesterday.
Well, if I'm not mistaken,
Kind of.
wasn't the Indian name for the quail was birds of the fire, if I'm not
yes,
mistaken. I've heard
Bird
that.
of fire.
And
Yeah,
so,
prairie chicken.
but,
Prairie
you
chicken
know,
or sharp-tail?
you know, when that huge fire went through Ashland, Kansas and burnt, you know, Facebook and things were flooded with pictures from ranchers, covey of quail sitting on the rim of a stock tank at a windmill, and it's a moonscape of burnt around them. Bobcats in the top of a tree, burnt for miles around them. But, you know, the pictures of quail people were posting, a covey lined up on a fence,
Wow.
top wire of a fence, the posts are burnt almost, and the birds survived. I mean,
Well,
it's,
I think Jurassic Park said it best. Nature finds a way.
yeah.
Finds a way.
Yeah.
And quail have been here for, well, we were talking earlier
Two
about the
million
fossil
years.
record of
2 million
finding quail.
years, yeah.
And, you know, quail as we know them today in the fossil record. So obviously they know what they're doing as far
Yeah.
as surviving and persisting on a landscape, but what can we do to help them?
Yeah, it's just that awareness and that advocacy that, and the reach that QF and PF do is great, but it's just got, it's almost got to get to the schools. It almost has to be like a mandatory class.
That's why we have
Would be-
so many
and
different
how would you ever
outreach
do that these
opportunities.
days,
Yeah,
you
well,
know?
we try to get into the schools to
Right.
help teach the different, you know,
There's a great program through Quail Forever right now called Milkweed in the Classroom.
Yes,
Where
yes.
chapters can get together.
Yeah, if
and
it gets you
sponsor
with the butterfly, if it starts you with the butterfly, at least it starts you.
I
the
wish
thing that I
I
would
wish
argue-
they'd teach these young kids how to trap. And the ground predators have exploded because there's coon hunters are non-existent anymore. It
Yeah.
used to be, we had coon hunters you know, but hides aren't worth anything. And
Right.
ground predators have exploded.
Yeah.
And they're getting hit from all sides.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so many different things
It's like
coming
a
at
shooting
us.
gallery with
Yeah.
5 different shooters going for the little.
Yeah.
Well, I think all of us probably have a different reason that we got into hunting in general, let alone bird hunting. You know, but you never know what that one thing is going to be that trips somebody's trigger and gets them crazy about conservation or ecology or hunting or sporting or whatever it may be. And you know, I remember a time a few years ago. I was out with at a little nature center here in Oklahoma with a guy named Ernie Martin, and this girl came in and she goes, "Oh, that's a wolf track," and he had a plaster cast there, a wolf cast. And he goes,
In Oklahoma.
it was one he had gotten up in British Columbia, but
Oh,
he had the cast there.
brought
He
it,
goes,
yeah.
actually, hang on one second. He goes to the back and he pulls out another one that he had because he had made like 10 that day. And he goes, "This is yours." And she lit up like a Christmas tree. Like that was the coolest thing that she had ever seen because she never expected to go and get a souvenir wolf track that was actually done from a wolf track cast.
Yeah.
But that little thing that happened that day that just one guy did out of the blue, I guarantee has made her conservation minded for the rest of her life.
Probably.
So,
Except
what
she's
can-
pro-wolf. It's a bad
maybe a
wolf.
bad example,
It's a
but
bad wolf joke. My apologies.
big
they have
bad
their
wolf.
place.
But, I mean, everything has a role
Yeah,
in a
up
managed
north.
population. That's
That's their place, up north.
No.
but that's the whole North American model, isn't
It
it?
is,
Is
yes.
management of species.
It
And
is.
so it may be butterflies that get somebody going crazy.
Right.
You know, I remember a few years ago going to a chapter banquet and giving a talk, and I said, "What do you want me to talk about?" And I said, "Anything but butterflies." That guy came last year and he talked about butterflies. Guess what I talked about?
Butterflies.
But I related it to them because these were all cattlemen,
Right.
and they didn't understand why butterflies were important to their cows. I mean, that's a hard distinction to make. Well, not really when you're considering that all of those plants that the butterflies are feeding on have more crude protein than the cattle cubes that you're dumping in the trough, and they're
Yeah.
free. In fact, they actually cost you negative money, if that makes sense, because you're not spraying the pesticides on and herbicides on them to kill them off anymore. So it's one of those things that even a butterfly can make an impact for quail. Even
Yeah.
all of it can.
Or at least the awareness of that's part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
I have taught a lot of the pollinator, just even with the kids' activities at a pollinator project where we've done plantings for pollinators, et cetera. And we do have those available for any of the schools and that type of thing. Just reach out to your local chapter. But I can still remember the parents are just as engrossed with what I'm teaching them about the plants and the birds
Do you
and
think
why
the
it's all
parents are engrossed
connected.
because the kids are engrossed?
No,
Or do you think
because
the
they want to
parents-
learn too.
They didn't learn it
They
and they're
didn't
going
learn
on.
it.
Right.
They
They
didn't
weren't-
learn
they
it.
weren't taught that.
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. I thought it was just one of those helicopter parents who was like, oh, good, he's interested in something. So the parents never learned it.
I gave a talk.
So we got 2 or 3 generations that haven't learned anything.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I gave a talk at an elementary school, and it was about the birds and the bees, not that birds and bees talk, but about pollinators and native wildflowers. And I had basically gone around for a couple weeks prior to this talk and just taken pictures of all the wildflowers that I saw. And I think I had 14 teachers abandon their classes to come and hear this talk. So she's absolutely right. If people can get really excited about this stuff because it's literally science and observations you can make in your backyard.
I guess my takeaway is if we could make backyard biologists out of the people that lived in Chicago where I had 8 million neighbors, they would vote in the right direction when it came to conservation. They wouldn't know wazoo about hunting, but boy, those milkweed plants and those butterflies that my kids get in, and we get the chrysalis every year. Like if every kid in Chicago was crazy about that, they'd vote for conservation.
Not even necessarily on a
long run.
voting scale, but who pays for conservation?
Oh, you do.
Well,
I'm retired.
touche. Well, but you're still buying your hunting license and your fishing license.
Fishing
At least
gear.
I hope you are.
Yeah,
But-
fishing.
I thought you didn't have to when you were 65.
But so those conservation dollars are what are paying for things
Right.
like the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation
Yeah.
to go do their work on wildlife
Right.
management areas. Not necessarily your urban communities aren't really putting in a lot of money to that. So, yeah, if we can get kids in an urban setting energized about it and wanting to buy a hunting license or wanting to
Fishing.
participate in conservation or a fishing license, then we're making progress.
Yeah, but I would think that's probably a much harder road to hoe than just getting them interested in something that's green and
It's constant
out the
outreach.
backside, outside.
Constant
just-
opportunities and
away from a
exposure.
stream.
Yes.
Well, I was gonna say, our population has swung lopsidedly towards an urban population.
Right.
You know,
Even
where-
in Oklahoma,
Yeah, I
there's
mean-
people who live very urban.
Well, the population's in Oklahoma City and Tulsa,
Yeah.
and that, like you said, in these urban settings, drive through any of these, even small towns, drive through there on a Saturday afternoon. How many kids do you see out in the driveway playing basketball, or boys out in the yards playing football,
Right.
or any of that?
Right.
The technology has moved our kids. A lot of
Inside.
parents let that be the babysitter.
So
let it
even
be
if
the
you lived in
entertainment.
rural Oklahoma, you had the distraction
Yeah.
of
Go
video
outside.
games.
Hey,
and not going outside.
Yeah, when we
anymore.
were kids,
Oh, we have tornadoes. You gotta do
Well,
that.
there's times in the
But you
year.
have to go outside to see what they're doing, so.
when we were kids, you'd be amazed where your bicycle would go, because we'd get down in places on creeks and we were always out, always.
Yeah.
And you just don't see that anymore because,
Right.
and I do think with, these video games and the technology, these kids don't get out and experience what we did. And,
Yeah,
Well,
you know.
and with that, the path that we took probably is not going to be the path that works for them. Because it's a
Right.
different
Yeah,
age.
it
It's
is.
an
It
age of
is.
technology. But making Plant ID accessible by Google Lens or Apple ID or whatever it is, making those things available, making folks aware that, here in Oklahoma, generally speaking, you're less than an hour away from a patch of public land. Period, no matter where you're at. And in some instances, you're less than an hour away from hundreds of thousands of acres of
Right.
public land. And that's a big deal. But if folks don't know about that, they can't
Right.
utilize it. And
Right.
in Oklahoma City, which is kind of our, all state capital and kind of urban center, if you will, between Oklahoma City and Tulsa, we've started doing programs like Vamos y Pescar, so that we can get out
Was that
inner
Latin?
city. It was Spanish.
Okay.
But get out and fish. And so we
get
bring
out
these
and fish.
inner city kiddos out, give them a fishing pole, and in some instances, we've actually given them a fishing pole and a tackle box
Yeah.
and let them fish, and given them that opportunity and get mom and dad out involved. And, as anybody that's worked in the R3 community, if we can get mom and dad bought in, the kiddos are right behind them. Or if we can get the kiddos bought in and really passionate about it, they're going to rope at least one of them.
That's
Someone's,
how- that's
someone's
how
got to
Alicia-
drive them to soccer or drive them to science class.
Exactly. And, you know, if they're going to take them and drive them to the pond to go fish, they're probably not going to sit in the car and play on TikTok for a while. They might actually get out and want to do a little fishing as well.
Yeah. Except none of the dads know how to clean fish anymore. It's this endless circle of failure.
But if we're working together,
Rick's gonna
between-
work on that as one of his mentorship deals. He'll show him how to clean
you know,
fish
if we're making
with an
sure
electric
that,
knife.
like, on our
Show them how to bread it and cook it like last
Yeah.
night. That was good.
Yeah.
So for quail, for instance, if you go to our main quail page for the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, you'll see hunting tips on how to go
Yeah.
hunting for them. You'll find how to bag them without a bird dog. You'll find recipes on how to clean and
Yeah, yeah.
different recipes to lose. So we try to make it a one-stop shop so it's as easy as possible. And then we can partner with those NGOs like Quail Forever, Pheasants Forever to help facilitate getting those people
Yeah,
outdoors.
it's getting the atten- you've got everything in the structure.
Right.
But you've got to get the word out to people.
Exactly.
And we were talking earlier how the dogs always make that an easier bridge to cross. Because if you got those kids out, let's say you took them out for a fishing trip, well, everybody would love a bobber to get pulled down.
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
exciting for a kid. But they have to be a little older and a little bit different than a bobber fisherman age. But getting them out with a bunch of dogs, it's like dogs is a universal healer. You know, I mean, they're.
If you don't like
every-
dogs, then leave.
Well, you're right. We can't fix that person.
No, it's-
you know,
Lost-
but
lost cause.
if you can get them out with the dogs, and I'm not saying put the shotgun right in their hand, just get them out there and watch a couple adults walk with and carry the birds. I mean, that I can't imagine. You
You
know,
can do that with a camera.
Exactly.
Even the girl that came today with the guy with the short hair,
Yeah.
his wife was not going to come today. She's a city person. She's never had hunting dogs, not been involved.
Right.
And she said, I am so glad I came today. This was the funnest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And now she's excited about the short hair puppy. And he told her, aren't you glad you came? She's like, yes, this is fascinating. I never saw a dog point before. I didn't know they did that.
Right.
You know, and she goes, and then the bird.
and
flew."
her,
It
her
didn't
husband
hurt that
probably
Rooster
tried to
put on a
explain
really
it to
good
her.
show.
Right.
Her
Well,
husband,
hey, as a trainer, there's nothing cooler than a new hunter coming out with a new pup.
Yep.
I'm just saying, their enthusiasm.
Right.
We get the guys that they know it all, and you know, you're like, well, why'd you come here? You know it all. You're telling us. But I'm just saying, we used to kid about it. First we train their dog, then we train the hunter.
Right.
You know, but I'm telling you, it's awesome to pass our knowledge on. It makes us feel good when Watson calls and said, hey, what am I looking for here?
Right.
You know, because we don't have a forum to go out and, you know, I'm by no means saying we're the experts, but we have a lot of experience. And
Yeah.
and I learned from guys that had a lot of experience. And we had shortcuts to success
Right.
because of that. And if it can help him enjoy this more, but that's the thing. It's awesome when we're up in the field and somebody that hadn't hunted, and they get a pup, and he goes out there and sticks it.
Right.
And looks like a magazine cover, and you can hear their heart pitter patter back there in the background. And hey, you've got them hooked for life.
Right, right.
How big is your smile the first time that you see somebody jump at a
Yep.
covey flush?
well, here's my
Yes,
here's
because
hey,
it's so fun. It's
that's
never
an
gonna
adrenaline
end.
hey, how big is my smile the first time a pup? You can tell he's got it. And we see a ton of them, and I feel the same every time.
Yeah.
I mean, and you know, we talk about that. You know, if somebody's
Training can get old, but that never gets old.
it never gets
Yeah.
old.
Training
And to
can
see
get-
the
It could
progression.
be rainy, it could be cold.
It's
but
awesome.
Watching that dog and then watching the people connect with the dog. And I've seen that in NAVDA. I've seen so many families that got into it just because of the dog. And the only difference is now the wife and kids decide what breeds it's going to be.
Yes.
Where back used to be the husband got a dog because his buddy had one and he had to sell it to the kids and the wife. Now the wife's on Google like, best dogs for house, home,
Yeah.
No,
and
yeah.
children
You
under
said it wrong.
4, 2, and 1.
Cutest hunting dog.
We have a friend that
So-
they had to make an agreement. Their daughters get to name the dogs, and every
Sure.
dog's named after a Frozen character. And
Hey, you
he
laugh.
goes
I
to
bet Olaf can point.
yeah, he goes to the field, and it's comical when he's calling.
Stud muffin, no.
Yeah, stud. They went off Frozen on one stud muffin.
So when you miss, do you still have to tell them to let it go?
Huh?
That's the theme song. I was trying to think of that line.
Yeah.
And that's why I do so many mentor hunts, though, because I love seeing when those kids are out there and harvest their first bird.
Oh,
The
yeah,
vi-
it's
that
so
their
fun.
joy is just
Right.
overwhelming, and I get that every single
You might
time.
not make them into a hunter, but they won't forget that.
They never
They won't
forget it.
forget that.
Neither one of you.
It's like you don't forget like certain teachers, like growing up. Like I hated school, but there was a couple teachers
Right.
that just
Stood
spoke
out.
to me, and that little event can speak to a.
I'd be willing to bet that everyone that listens to your podcast has been in that position that we just talked about. They saw that dog point for the first time.
Yeah.
What hooked them.
Right.
And that's why they're listening to your podcast. They're hooked.
Yeah.
You know, people that are not interested in what we do or aren't
Right.
interested in hunting, you know, they've got other things to do besides listen to Ron.
Right.
But the people that listen to you, they're ate up.
Right.
Like we are.
Yeah,
And that's okay.
But, you know, like to try to tie that, if that's the, you know, I don't think you could put dogs in a bad light in this country. I mean, there's some random things that happen with some dogs, but like that could be something, and I know you do it with, you know, QF and PF and RGS, you know, that the dog kid thing is another way, you know, get them interested in botany, but then if you can get them interested in botany and a dog, you know, because you know, and how many parents these days can tell their kids no? So get the kids, you know what I mean? I'm not allowed to spank my granddaughter, apparently. I didn't know that till the other day. You know, apparently they don't say no. I don't know.
Well, there are some dads. We've had a few that the wife decided that the kids need a dog, and dad goes and gets a bird dog.
Yeah.
And then mom's like, I thought we were getting a family. You said get a dog.
Have you ever seen a lab puppy?
Oh, they're beautiful. Yeah, hey. Who wouldn't want a Boykin Spaniel or,
Oh,
you know?
Brittany puppy's the best.
A setter.
No, Brocco.
Hey, what's the best kind of bird dog? The one that finds you birds.
There you
Okay?
go.
Let's
Yeah.
face it.
That's right.
And I think another thing to keep in mind with all of this is, why do we bird hunt? You know, I don't think at any point in history humankind has bird hunted to
For
completely
sustenance.
stock up on food.
No.
Otherwise, we would have gone extinct long before the passenger.
Sure.
Right.
So, but why do we hunt? We hunt so that we can have that connection with the bird dog, and specifically bird
And our
hunter.
friends and our,
And our
you know,
followers.
And
yeah.
I think bird hunters that hunted in those heydays in the 60s, 70s, 80s kind of lost sight of that, because it was, I'm going to go bird hunt so I can
Well, it
get
was
my
like
bird.
that story I was telling last night. His dad was not interested in taking us kids.
Yeah.
We had plenty of stuff to do. Go play somewhere. You know, they probably dropped the ball a little bit.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, when I was young, back in when it was great, and it was great, the only question anybody asked each other among hunters, how many birds did you kill?
Right.
How many birds did you kill?
You
And I mean,
assume
we
that-
have one or two friends that still, how many birds you kill?
Right.
But now it's, you know, how many coveys did you see?
Right.
You know?
How'd your dog
and-
do?
Yeah, you know.
Which
but-
one actually
That's
killed
what
the
I
bird?
think.
But
Yes.
it
How's
has.
that new dog
What kind of
doing?
dog do you have?
Did they hold?
But I'm just saying, you know, there was a time when it was, you know, hey, you've seen the pictures back in the day. They'd have 40 deer hanging up here. Or they'd have 2,000 ducks they killed in a day. Or, you know, some of these preserve hunts, and they got 80 quail piled up on a pickup tailgate after the season's over.
Yeah.
And most bird hunters, wild bird hunters, aren't of that mindset now.
No.
And, you know, hey,
I'd
I'd venture to say
They're
that
still out
farmers
there,
and
though.
ranchers and hunters are your most concerned.
What's good for the bird is good for the
Conservationists.
herd, right?
Well, I'm talking about they're concerned about conservation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't come out here and abuse the land and survive as a farmer and rancher.
Right.
I can't. You know, people think, oh, we just overpasture everything. We farm. You know, we can't do that or we can't survive. I will say this, getting back to a point we talked about quite a bit earlier on, you know, doing things like we've always done, you know. I'm guilty of it, and anybody on this podcast that farms or ranches is, I promise you, if they look in the mirror, is guilty of it. And we laugh about it. Why are we out here moldboard plowing? Because that's what we've always done.
Why are you brush
That's
hogging
what-
the field every fall?
Well, because that's what we've always done. Dad did it that way.
Right.
My grandpa did it that way, and we're stubborn. I remember when they first started no-tilling, we're all like, what are they thinking? You gotta go out there and chisel and disc and, you know, rip that ground, and we're creatures of habit, and it's hard for us to change. And, you know, that's the thing. We've got to.
Well, there's really cool
Be
tools that are out
open-minded.
there today that are like precision agriculture that are available that
Yeah, it can read
can
the
even
ground.
take like you can literally plug a thumb drive into your tractor and one it'll drive itself, but you can download the data from every seed head, from every spray head, from every harvester, and you know what every row produced, basically
Right.
what every plant produced.
And if 12 acres down the
and-
side always was eating
Hey,
up more
literally,
diesel than it was making
through
corn.
soil testing, they have applicators now that put down different amounts
Oh, yeah.
on one field, according to the soil testing data fed into that computer, and it'll give a lower amount on this part of the
More,
field, and
more.
it'll raise them out.
And
Yeah, I mean, that's how precision it is
Yeah.
got.
And the crazy thing about it is you can go to any row crop farmer and say, hey, where's your area of lowest yield? And they'll point at it on the map without
farmer-
having all this technology.
Right.
Say, oh, well, there's always that one spot
But
that
I'm
gets
gonna
real
keep
wet.
farming it, 'cause
I'm gonna keep mine.
We always have. Grandpa did.
I remember I was up in North Dakota.
How come we don't farm there? That's the junk pile. We don't farm that.
That's right. I was up in North Dakota and folks literally putting corn in through the potholes.
Yeah.
And then wondering why they were having issues getting their tractor stuck for 6 months out of the year. It turns out if you don't plant that one really, really wet spot, one, your duck hunting goes through the roof.
Yeah.
But two, you're keeping a few more pheasant on a property, or your cranes are stopping over there, or whatever the case may be. It's better.
Yeah.
And it didn't take rocket surgery to figure that out. But if we have the data from the tractor, it makes it a lot easier to put together and paint a picture for a landowner to be able to say, hey, what if we did it this way?
Yeah. And gotta get the whole.
Back to bird dogs. Isn't this? I thought this was a dog podcast.
Yeah, well,
I did say we were going to go down the rabbit
we
hole.
were going to go down the rabbit hole, but it with all that said, because that's in your head like 24. You probably wake up at 2 in the morning thinking about that.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right. We,
Lather, rinse, and repeat every day.
and we think at 2 in the morning, like, did that dog come home yet?
Are they gonna call when
But-
she turns up?
As like, see now I'm gonna see how could I forget the name Watson? I mean it's Watson. I'm like that's like
Because his last name's Thomas, so you think it's
Elementary,
Thomas.
my dear.
That's right.
this. So
And
you
his
had
dog's
no prior bird dog experience before. So you're in the army. You're in the army now,
Yep, I'm in the Army.
and they let you have a dog.
Yeah, they let me have a dog. Crazy as that is.
Oh,
I
you
live.
must
I live
be off base.
Yeah, I live off
Okay.
base, and it's funny. I
That'll
got
really be a
the
Malinois.
Hey, artillery
that.
man.
yeah artilleryman, and I don't even remember how it happened. I got the dog, and I've always been fascinated with working dogs, and I called some guy that's a trainer in Oklahoma City, and he was like. I've talked to David. He said he doesn't even know who it was, but he was like, "Oh,
That's
I'm
not a negative.
He was like, "Oh, I'm not." The guy was like, "Oh, I'm not doing it anymore." But if I were getting a dog trained, I would go to a guy in Chickasha, David Lindsay. He's who I would have train my dog, and I called him, and that's one great thing
So you
about.
already own the dog.
Yeah, so I'd own the dog.
So
and I
now
was
you're
like,
researching what to do with the dog.
yeah, I was like, I got to figure this out, you know. So obviously,
Get the dog.
I'm a man of simple motivations. I have to have a drive on me to
Dog.
figure it
See
out.
dog. Buy dog.
That's right.
What do I do with dog?
And I,
Have dog.
I called David, and
Pull your
I
weight.
think that afternoon, I think we talked probably for an hour and 45 minutes, just talking all about
David.
dog stuff. Oh no, yeah, David. We just, and it was
I
just,
was needing
it
some
was
counseling at the time, so he included that.
He's doing online traffic.
yeah.
Have you got time, Watson? I've got some problems I need to discuss.
No. He was just giving me everything, giving me the secrets to the trade, and it's it's come a long way from there. So
And how far away do you live from here?
I live 45 minutes.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, it's not bad at all. And I come up here, and I've trained with them some, and it was great. I sent my first dog here with them for like 2 or 3 months, and
That's your Griff.
yeah, it's
Why?
my Griffon.
Well, I will tell you, he's got the best coated Griffon that I've seen in this country in 10 years.
Oh, he's great looking, and I was
I don't
it was
think he's great looking. His coat. I was talking
His
about
coat is
No, his coat's
he was great
fantastic.
looking. No, but and
So
then I
you-
was up here every Saturday, and we would just
With that
do
dog?
training. Yep, with that
Okay.
dog. So
It
that's
made it
what that's,
awesome.
Because you did not have, you don't see many Griffons here.
We see some wire hairs,
had
not
some.
many Griffons. There's
Right.
some around, and there's Bill Kennedy's.
Western
There's some great wire hairs around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're just in this quail country, a short-coated dog
Well, I was
is
gonna
going
say,
to thrive.
remember,
I
I
mean,
called
it's
Wally and said,
easier
"Can
on
I
them.
shake
You don't need to wear a
dog?"
sweater in the
Well,
summer.
that's right. But I'm talking about sandbird.
Each
Just
of ours got
your
pretty big
Every
dogs.
maintenance.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
maintenance.
stick tights, kookaburras. But, so there's a reason, that there's more of those numbers. But anybody if you're gonna go to a trainer, go as much as, if a trainer doesn't want you there, don't use that trainer. And Watson was here every weekend.
Right.
And it was awesome. And there were times we did a ear pinch on Watson because,
That's right,
well,
first
but
fetch.
the thing was, he was there to see
The
so many
progression.
steps and the progression. But, a lot of times people send us a dog and we don't see them for several months.
Right.
They show up and the dog's ready to go and we have to spend a day. Now, these are the commands.
Transferring
Yeah,
the-
you're trying to tell them. Watson was here.
Yeah.
We let him handle the check cord. And, it was great for both of them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I
And,
learned so much.
yeah,
It really fast tracked.
And we don't charge
Oh,
for the,
oh, so
we don't charge for the owner coming. I'm just saying, but he made the time, and that's the kind of people, that he's
Right.
gonna be a successful owner.
Yeah. And you did have some success, right?
Yeah, so we
I caught a piece of it. They called you up and you actually got some birds.
Yes, so we got into a few birds. I killed a small amount of birds. I'm not gonna act like I killed a bunch of birds, but we
believe
did.
you if you did.
Oh yeah, I killed so many birds.
Bird numbers
Oh,
are down,
man.
Watson, bird numbers are
Yeah, and I
down.
still was limiting out every day, but no, but we flushed some coveys and just covered a lot of ground, and we learned a lot about the terrain, the stuff
Yeah.
that we were talking about, and overall just an incredible season.
Yeah.
We're
You got
we're
a
really
hunting buddy
excited.
in the Army?
No, that's
Are
why
you
I'm
soloing out there?
That's why I'm calling David and Jenny every weekend. There's not really very
Didn't
many.
you know you have a whole family that's really waiting to help
I
you?
know. But I'm serious. Outside of NAVDA and places like this in Quail Forever, that's how I'm making my friends. There aren't very many
Yeah.
24-year-old quail hunters out there. So if there are, hit me up. So
Yeah, most of them are just getting out of college and thinking if they got to go do some master's degree somewhere, and they don't.
Hey, where Watson is
They need to
stationed.
slow down.
Used to be as incredible a quail hunting down around.
I've always heard about
Fort
military
Sill.
bases
Yeah,
being-
but Fort Sill,
Yeah, they
that, the refuge down there, southwestern Oklahoma was incredible. And, all down to the Red River,
Yeah.
across there. And, yeah, it's tough. He lives down there and has to travel to go bird hunt.
4 hours.
if that's
to
what I
go.
got to do, then that's what I got to do.
That's what we do.
Yeah. So, does the military base allow hunting?
Yeah. It's 100,000 acres. Fort Sill is one of the biggest Army bases in
I
the
had
country.
a book once that I lost it, and it was hunting military installations around the country. And I thought that would be a cool thing to find all the military bases.
It's
you
incredible.
could-
And I've thought
I know
about
there's
it.
a lot
so-
of rule differences. Some are,
Yeah.
you have to be in the service, you have to be a
Most of
family
them
member.
are, or veteran or stuff
Yeah.
like that. But I started off deer hunting on post, and there's great deer in Fort Sill. But I found a few coveys of quail.
Yeah.
There are some quail.
There
I
are
don't think
very
they
few.
allow the quail hunting on Fort Sill anymore, do they?
Yeah,
Yeah, they do.
Back in the day, I knew a couple old dog trainers down at Lawton, and they would call them when some of the generals would fly in to come bird hunt.
Oh, really?
And those guys would go out and guide them. And
Wow.
they said, hey, it was awesome. But
It's actually an incredible opportunity. I think I get a lot of access to a lot of semi-private lands. I've been looking, now that I'm all into it, I'm planning my next fall. I'm definitely going to Montana, but I want to go to Arizona as well. There's a big Army base in southeast Arizona. Fort
plus 90% more of the state's public. So
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
just
Fort-
saying.
You just gotta look out for unexploded ordnance. But
Yes.
Military
You have to
ID,
watch
you could
out.
probably get down to some.
He'll be down at White Sands
I know,
before
that's
you
what I'm
know it.
saying.
Yeah,
Missile
that'd be
base, nuclear missile base.
Me and my dogs in the impact
Hey,
area.
that's the place to go, Arizona, all those. New Mexico, traveling wing shooters. That's what
I know.
we've become.
That when someone's hooked is when they're trying to figure out what state they're going to go to the next
Yeah.
time. You read it in the magazine. Well, it used to be reading the magazine. Now you can just see it on your phone.
And
but-
watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't want to drop any names, but I remember several years ago they came out with a little publication called The Traveling Wing Shooter, and I thought, they've heard about us. They've heard about us. We've become the Traveling Wing Shooters.
I
That
think I remember.
publication is no longer being printed.
Right, I knew it wasn't.
Jenny, when you started bird hunting, after you got rid of the sled dogs and the horses, and you got your setters, you had your Munsterlanders,
Oh, yeah.
all them other dogs, when was the first time you hunted quail? Was it when you moved here? Did you have some
Yeah.
traveling wing shooter.
No, the first time I hunted quail was probably 2000,
Yeah.
2000, and so I didn't have a bird dog per se. So I hunted quail and pheasant in the same weekend. They were everywhere, and so I wanted a lab. I was living in a small place at that time, so I got a lab, and then we quail hunted one more time or something, and they had pointers. I'm like, I'd always been fascinated with short hairs because up in Minnesota, lots of my friends had short hairs, and so I said I wanted a short hair and I wanted a blue roan or a black roan or gray roan, whichever. And so I went like right then, and I went and got a short hair, and I'm like, well, this is not enough dogs, so I got.
Not enough motor.
This is not
She was clutching and shifting.
Yep.
Not enough dog,
No.
plural. Like you didn't want more
Yep.
dogs, you didn't have enough dog.
Well, yeah, both. I wanted more dogs and more dog power, so I ended up with the Brittany and the setter, right quick.
Right.
But yeah, I would say 2000.
Sounds like impulse buying.
Oh yeah, oh, I'm right there with you.
Have
I'm
you
not
not looked
guilty
at
of
her
that.
kennel?
I'm not
There's a
guilty
new
of
puppy
that.
every 2 weeks.
I went to Utah to get one last weekend.
Yeah.
I was gonna take that little puppy home today.
Yeah, so that was the first time, and I had it with somebody else, and the same deal. I saw their dogs, and I was like, well, I want my own dogs.
Yeah.
And I was hooked just that one, second time, I think.
So your wing shooting in Minnesota was minimal compared to what it's been here?
Yeah, I don't think, yeah.
I mean,
didn't-
it was
spent-
occasional.
Yeah, more so just, that wasn't my fascination at that time. It was more the horses and the riding.
Right.
But, so it was,
Ron,
just, around the cabin, there was
Yeah.
a pheasant. It was no big deal. It wasn't that big of a deal
Right.
until I got the dogs, and that was my
All
deal.
of a
'cause
sudden, the light bulb goes on.
Right, yeah. I mean, I wanted to train horses, and then I wanted to train my dogs, so it's.
Yeah.
When you talk about wing shooting in Wisconsin and Minnesota,
Oh.
I didn't realize when we got there, she said, now, you gotta listen really careful because we count flushes.
But I
We
had
don't
to
count
tell him.
coveys or
I had to
birds.
tell him,
Count, so I'm like, I'm not hearing
We're
anything.
grouse hunting, and
There's
I'm
not
like,
much shooting, but there's lots of
well, we're
flushes.
grouse hunting, I'm like, shh, stop talking.
Why? We're trying to hear birds.
Well,
Dave's got to be going, what do you mean we're trying to hear the birds?
hey, when we got more time, I'll have her tell you what happened after she asked me if I wanted to put a bell on my dog's collar. I was like, yeah, I think I'm in the wrong place.
So are you guys already dating?
Oh yeah.
Or is that, you didn't,
Yeah,
you didn't meet on the grouse hunt?
No, Ron, I've never hunted down a logging trail in rural Wisconsin, and I'm just telling you, that's a different experience. One of the most beautiful nature walks I've ever been on.
Wonderful walk.
It was awesome.
No sandburrs.
Most beautiful leaf colors, and it was incredibly beautiful.
We took 9 selfies that day. It was
No
weird.
snakes. He's walking down the thing.
Hey, there's Lake Superior.
Look at that shit.
I think we might have heard one flush.
That was a bad year.
It was a bad year.
The year before was so good.
But I was listening.
Well, it didn't help.
I didn't know you were supposed to be
Well,
quiet.
hey, we didn't know.
Later on, David said that wasn't a grouse. I just had gas.
Well, if we hadn't been screaming with the lost pointer
Yeah, we had
at the
one.
top of our
One dog
lungs
got
for
20
5
yards
hours,
off
we
the
might
logging
have-
trail
might
and
have
was
come
lost.
across more grouse.
Hey, she heard some geese over there, I think, and she got bored and went after it. Literally,
So you took
an
an
English
Oklahoma
I
pointer.
took 2 pointers.
I'm saying an Oklahoma pointer
I
because
did. Oh,
there ain't a tree worth mentioning in my vision of this place.
Hey, I
I kept trying to
took
tell
2 pointers I knew I could handle, that would handle.
At
Because
least-
I had an idea what we were going into.
All right.
I had I mean, those dogs up there are great at that game, and mine were, we were going from a football field to a basketball court, basically.
Right.
But
Different sport.
they handled it great. This little female, she got after something. And I didn't have Garmin's.
It just pointed. The setter was on point, and we turned around, Rosie's on point.
Yeah, she
I don't-
was-
I don't know what we did, and all the the setter held, and she moved up. And 4
then
feet
she
into the woods, you can't see him anymore.
Yeah.
That was the last time we saw her for 3 days.
Well, here, we won't have to get into the whole story, but I will tell you this. Some of her dear friends are sled doggers, run sled dogs. Their son had won the junior Iditarod that year. And so we go over to visit them. There's sled dogs everywhere. We tell them that I've lost this female pointer.
Right.
And they told us right then, they said, if your dog goes into the woods and doesn't come out before dark, it's not coming out because
Yeah.
of the wolves.
Wolf food.
Yeah.
And so you just accept it. I mean, they posted it on all their, sled dog sites, all the people
Right,
in that
Facebook
area, and
sites.
everybody, the only comments we get back are, he needs to feed that dog. Or no, it's, he needs to feed that dog. Yeah, he needs to eat. Yeah, bratwurst. I mean, well, hey, that
The other
pointer was
comment on the
that dog
reply
was in shape.
Yeah.
Ron, that dog was in Olympic athlete shape, and they're like, you need to feed that dog. Hey. Well, the wolves are going to eat it, so I guess it don't matter.
They thought it was a trail cam picture of a dog that hadn't eaten in a month. It was actually a nice picture of the dog.
Yeah, by the grace of God.
How did you guys find the dog?
I went back down that trail right before we were leaving.
Right before we're leaving, we said, let's go back.
Leaving
and
to come
see.
home.
Yeah, to come back to me.
And we were several miles down this logging trail when we lost her. We pulled
Yeah,
in
over 4
right
miles
off
down the trail.
off the county road, got out, and I told her, I said, bring a dog in case. And we didn't walk 100 yards, and that dog turned around and went on points, one of the Llewellyns. And it was a blackberry
Raspberry bush, yeah.
blackberry bush. Briar. It was huge.
You weren't going through
And
it.
she was back in there, and I mean, she was shaking. She wouldn't come out. I had to crawl in there. and get her.
Oh, my.
Grace of God deal. But she had come. She was headed back,
came back
out
down.
of there.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
hey,
that's
that blackberry bush might have saved her.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But hey, I didn't hear any flushes while we were on that circuit. I can tell you.
So, needless to say, you have not shot a Northwoods
I
grouse.
think there's more quail in Oklahoma than there were in grouse in Wisconsin at that time.
And we're in a bad drought.
That's right. But it is. If anybody that's never been up there, it's a beautiful.
Well, you know
place.
Watson's got to try it.
It's a beautiful.
It's gonna be
You
on
can
my
just
list,
tell.
of course.
It's a beautiful place to
the
hunt,
itch.
and
Yeah.
we have a friend that he's going for he wants to mount every species,
Yeah.
but when I told him what the hunting was like, he's like, could you just shoot one for me and bring it back? I was like, no, you're going up there and killing your own bird. Yeah.
James, did you ever get up north and hunt?
A couple times. I was telling you that I think the last time was right around Kalkaska.
Okay. What did you think of it?
Never saw a bird,
Did you hear any?
I think. Flushes.
but I wasn't sure what it was. They said they heard flushes, and I'm like,
We always say that. It keeps our spirits up.
Ron,
nobody yelled rooster or anything, so
Hey, Ron, I stole a couple pictures off some guy in Minnesota's Facebook page and sent them to my friends and told them, yeah, I'm confused. I couldn't report zero.
He goes, yeah, I was out. He goes, oh, we heard a bunch of them. It's a sad, and I know guys that take like consistently, which is a huge number of grouse, that are in the 40 to 50 grouse a year. That would be, but those guys know they're happy. Those guys know their food source. Those guys
You
are
have to.
just, they
You
just,
do the same deal. You
they
And your
have a lot of
dog.
time.
yeah, and they put that time into that, and them dogs learn like, look, whatever I am, if I'm a 50-yard dog, I'm a darn good 50-yard dog. You know, they're not casting because out here they learned that a big cast could get them
More
a
birds.
reward.
Right.
And there, if you did pin a grouse down 400 yards from your owner,
Not gonna.
you can't hardly walk 400 yards across a pasture and expect a quail to be there. You are never. The grouse is not going to be there.
They're gonna-
when you get there,
Hey,
climbing through popple thickets.
Yeah, I can unequivocally claim there's one thing that this kennel has that nobody else, I would be willing to say nobody else in the state of Oklahoma has at this right now. Now, might have happened once before in history. What did Bucky point? Remember, I'd killed that woodcock. He pointed that woodcock, and I killed it. The next point he had,
I
what
go
was it?
walking in there, and
She's walking
I'm
in there
like,
to flush it.
I'm gonna. He's waiting to shoot.
I'm staying up on a high spot, boys. I'm figuring this out. Tell him what came out of there.
Oh, I came out of there screaming after the young moose jumps up.
Hey, Bucky had a moose.
I'm like, oh, it's black.
A little one. I mean, yeah, I thought, like, what was that?
A young moose.
I guess, yeah.
They say a mama
He
was
read
bad,
it
she
wrong.
might
He thought it was a
charge.
That's what I
Yeah,
said.
turned out to be Hey, I told her, hey, that's a
Get
wild
out of
game
here.
scent.
Get out of here.
So I've hunted a few other places. I've managed to get to North Dakota. I was in Idaho last year for a little bit.
So they have trees in Idaho.
They got, well, I mean, we got some trees here, just not in this
Lots of
particular
rocks
part
in
of
Idaho.
Oklahoma. We've got pine plantations down the far southeastern part that, are quite comparable to Georgia.
And there's
So,
actually quail down there.
And there's probably one of our most stable populations of quail down there. It's not your normal Oklahoma quail hunt, but there are some down there.
Yeah. So overall, state of quail, it can get better.
It can get better.
It's not the end of the world.
No,
And,
Oklahoma's still one of the top locations to be able to go hunt wild quail.
right.
I mean, that's the selling point. And the good news is that quail are still interspersed enough statewide that anywhere really where habitat management is done, the quail respond.
They can pop back
And
up.
so, we've come out of a drought, hopefully, knock on wood. We've been in this 3-year drought. We get some normal rainfall at the right time, and we're up for a boom here in the next year or two.
Oh.
Fingers crossed.
We wouldn't recommend overwhelming numbers come down, though. We want to have the hunter say, we'll let them know when to come.
Right.
You guys should go to Kansas. Kansas is so nice.
Tuned to podcast.
Go to Kansas.
2-year period, because that first year kind
Yeah.
of helps set the stage for the
Right.
next year.
Yep,
So,
yeah.
Well, and I do a pretty good job about trying to get, I do an August report that goes out on our website. I do a season outlook that goes out that gives, hunters a little bit of an idea. And I've had hunters come that, man, I just can't find anything. I've been out here walking miles and I haven't found a single bird. And I'm like, well, I'll get on the phone with them. Where are you at? What WMA are you on? And, I can't do it for everybody, obviously.
Right.
But, I had one gentleman that he
The help's
spent,
been there for him.
yeah, and within about 30 minutes of talking to him on the phone, he had a bird in his hand.
Yeah. That made
And
him feel good.
no, it didn't. He said I was, quote, as bad as Texas. I don't know what that means. But no, he was frustrated that he'd come down expecting this, land run hunt
Plethora
in the
of-
middle of a drought, and he actually had come down in the middle of a snowstorm. We had about a foot of snow on the ground in the area that he was going to, and got frustrated. But the fact that at my office, which was almost 3 hours away from where he was hunting, he could call up and say, "Hey, I'm frustrated. Where do I go?"
Yeah,
and I
that's
was
crazy.
able to get him on birds. So.
Drop me a pin.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up with 2 myths that I hear about quail.
Yeah,
They can have 3 clutches of chicks a year.
they can.
That is, because I've heard it, then I've heard people say, no, maybe 2. And I'm
Right
not talking
conditions.
about a damaged nest renap. I
Right.
mean,
You
on
know,
purpose,
It's absolutely based on the individual.
but it's got to be, everything's got to be right.
Yeah, it's got to absolutely line up perfectly. That maybe that first nest initiation got temperature stressed. It froze, and so the eggs were no longer viable.
Well, that's it, yeah.
She drops ship and goes and makes a second. It's not often if they are successful nests that you're going to have
Right.
more than 2. But she will try as long as.
But if weather was good and you came down, like said, you could just paint a brush and make everything right for the quail. She could have a clutch of eggs. They could hatch, and she would have another clutch of eggs that same year.
she very well could.
Starting in April all the way through October.
And see, and that's where I heard people say that it's been documented they've done it 3
We've
times.
actually, so we've
Right,
actually done some.
Yeah, all the old timers will tell you, your bird crop depends on those late hatches. If you have a great bird crop, you had a great late hatch.
We've actually done some.
The late hatches are, predators get a lot of early hatch birds,
Sure.
and it's tough. I mean, they got to survive.
Everything
They
loves
eat
to eat
everything.
quail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the
Including us.
including us.
It was one of our final years, we were doing the beaver post-reproduction survey on quail with Oklahoma State University. And it was mid-October, and we actually had a casualty of a quail that was probably 2 inches tall, of a little baby that, probably hadn't been on the ground 2 weeks. So it was probably a 1st of October born bird.
Yeah, we saw birds in early December that hadn't colored up enough to tell their sex.
Even
You know,
the
and
first
that
couple,
first- yeah.
Definitely.
last couple of years, we've had that kind of late summer rain that
Right.
it kind of reinitiated another nesting attempt.
Yeah, because that, like a pheasant, now of course it's not from here, but let's say sharp-tailed grouse, just because of their range, they will re-nest on a damaged nest. But once those eggs hatch and there's little chicks running around, they're not going to ovulate again and they're just not going to do it again.
Well, I think another kind of part of it is we get this kind of blinders on that bobwhite quail, they're probably the most researched animal on Earth.
Really?
And so we know a lot about them. We've spent a lot of
So that's why you
dollars.
hear some of these.
Yeah, and so you
3,
kind of
4.
see these cool stats and stuff
Right.
that you hear about quail, but realistically, it could be all galliforms. So that would be your turkey, your pheasant, your chickens, and your quail that are
Yeah.
all kind of doing these same things a little differently, but that may be, in turkeys, there could be multiple nesting attempts that we're just not documenting yet.
Okay.
And they
then-
have documented up to 35% of the time or maybe more, males sit and incubate nests.
Well, that was the second part of the 2-part. The other thing was, and this is usually barroom talk, but I think I heard it on somebody else's podcast, that she would have she would lay a clutch of eggs and chicks would hatch. She'd go off and leave the male with just.
So we can see that. We can also
What's
see a
it
little bit
called
of
when
a community response.
when 2 parents watch a young? Is there a name for it?
I'm sure there is. I'm going to draw a blank on it, and I may not have enough bars to Google
Oh,
it.
married,
Mom
married
and Dad?
couple.
Like co-parenting.
Married couple. So, I am not saying that on podcast.
No. Anyway, so some birds do not co-parent.
Right.
Yeah,
Some
Bob
do.
White.
Well, and you've got some where the male is around for the initiation and then is gone. And he
Right.
has no role in the
And then like
nest.
ducks, they have no role. They just bye-bye.
Right. Or you have like eagles where
Single mom, poor
absolutely it's a day-to-day male and female both
Male,
working on
female
it. But
thing.
one of the things that we found here recently in Oklahoma is that within one nest, you can have eggs from multiple females that were fertilized by different males. And so you may have one female kind of parasitizing an egg into a nest. If
Just
she-
laying an egg there.
Yep. If I think Stacy's going to be a better mom than me, I'm going to leave a couple eggs in her nest, and I'll leave a couple in Rachel's, and we'll go on.
It's that our species.
But that's as an
Spreading the
arsenal
love,
species. They're
making,
trying
spreading
to-
the chances to survive.
Right, it's survival of the fittest, that maybe Rachel's gonna give a little bit better parenting to my chick than I would. And so,
Actually, Bobby probably will.
but touche. I mean, it's Mr. Bob White. But, with that, we also can see that one clutch of eggs, we get reports of huge broods of 20 plus birds. Obviously, there probably wasn't 20 eggs in one nest. So you end up with this almost babysitter hen, or it could be a babysitter male.
I've seen it with turkeys where several hens all
Exactly.
have half
And
a
so
dozen.
maybe this
behind
one
them.
hen is off doing another nest initiation and she's dropped the kids off with another hen. So those are absolutely things that have been observed out
Yeah.
in the wild.
And, real quick, this little
Yeah.
radio collar. So obviously, we're not looking at migration. What is this little? I don't know. What does this weigh?
So that's about 6 grams.
Yeah, it's very light.
So what you're looking
Would
at
you
is
put it on a male or a female?
so those go on both.
Okay.
Basically, we're just wrapping up the final parts of this study and getting all the data finalized, and we'll probably be unraveling some of the data that we've got from this for decades, honestly.
This particular one or this whole program?
This whole program. So we had a whole bunch of these that went out, and then it's a 6-gram Argos satellite collar. So when we think about tracking quail movement throughout history, what we first imagine is the old VHF Wago antenna
Yeah.
with the headset, and you're following a beep, and you're paying interns to go out and follow birds, and you might be getting a point or two per day.
Right.
And we had a big research project in the 90s that focused on exactly that. We wanted to zoom in and really get an idea of one individual of what they were doing. And
Yeah.
so we trapped a whole bunch of quail. We put these collars on them. Call them collars, actually more like a backpack. They fit right on
Right.
the back of a quail, and they wear it. There's a little strap that comes out just like a backpack under the wing.
It's crazy that they can still survive with that
And
on there.
they're
That's
light
why they
enough-
find them
Well,
all.
no, hey, during hunting season, we've killed more than a few at pack saddle.
Yep.
Really?
And they ask that you leave it in the box, and stuff. And hey, I've seen guys at the parking areas, you'll go by there and they've got a piece of wire ran through some of them. They just hung them on the fence. They didn't want to stop at the box.
When the
Just hung them on
cool
the
thing
fence.
is if you do
But-
take this one home, I
Yeah.
can find out where your
That's
house is.
right.
But so with this one, the old VHF technology, you might get a point or two on a quail per day. With
Right.
these, we were able to get up to 17, 18 points per day per quail.
So that would be location points.
Exactly. So
So that's what you're monitoring them for, is
That's
to
their-
find out their movement.
right. So what we might have in the 90s is that they were on the north side of this pasture. And then on the next day, they were on the south side of this pasture. Okay, that tells us they were in this pasture.
Right.
With this technology, I'm not really going to do any good to show it on the podcast, but I can send you some videos of it, that we can actually see how a quail traversed the landscape. And that when it had a clutch of eggs with it, or when it had that first brood, they were moving maybe 20 yards a day and going right back to the same cover. Or this one hen was going right back to the nest every day. We can also see that they avoided things, like one bird in particular came up to a wheat field that had just been planted, didn't go across it because there's no cover, literally walked the fence line around this property and kept going on the same path.
Wow.
So they've also avoided things like oil well sites that, we think of. They get pretty weedy. There's a lot of bugs there. Maybe there's something else at play of why those birds are avoiding them. But little nuances like that, and this one in
You can
particular,
get that much information from it.
from just that little deal.
Right.
And even little things about,
Otherwise, you pretty much know where it went to bed and where it went to sleep.
yeah, if you're lucky at that point.
Yeah.
The VHF is great for getting some basal technology, but this will really give us a zoomed in look of.
How long have they been using these?
So, to my knowledge, this is a scaled down version that was the best, smallest transmitter that we could get made.
Yeah.
And so we started using these about 2018, 2019. And we just wrapped up-
compiling a lot of good data.
Exactly. So
But I know they got them on woodcock too. I imagine it's
Yeah.
got to be about the same size booger on there.
Yeah.
But let Ron know the realization of how much one of those units are.
So that little unit is about $1,500.
Right.
So it's not something very cheap. But thanks to conservation and Pittman Robertson dollars and,
Yeah.
and partners like
But
Quail
if
River
it's
Festival.
worth it to you, you can go out and make friends with the wildlife manager out at one of those areas and take him hunting with you, and he can pull up on his phone right where each gummy's at, and then you're like, I got the 1,500 back.
You could spend that in another place.
Yeah, yeah.
So I will say
So
no
we're going
on
to put a
that.
low jack on his car.
The only two people that had access to this data during season were myself and Dr. Dwayne Elmore, the
Right,
researchers over at
right.
Oklahoma State. Damn it. And so,
Sorry, Charlie.
I could in fact sit at my computer and pull it up and go, okay, I'm going to go hit that shrub, but I wouldn't even let myself download the data during season just because. It's
So
just- I
don't go
wanna
buy a
know.
headset and expect Intel to call you and say, hey, to your right, to your right.
I'm going to go out there when I get to Oklahoma with divining rods.
But
Over
see,
there under that black locust tree.
but I want to know when you're going to come out with your feature premiere movie that says "A Day in the Life of a Quail."
Well, we've got a couple of small videos that we've put together to kind of demonstrate how some of this technology works. And with this one individually, you can see it kind of got crunched. We were able to watch it go back and forth across the road on this one particular WMA. We said, man, this bird's going to get smacked
killed
by a car. Sure enough, this bird, in fact, this transmitter was laying right on the yellow line in the center of the road.
Oh my God.
But the cool thing is with this transmitter is when we recovered it, we obviously found this crunch mark where something had
mark.
bit it.
Yeah.
Fox or something like that.
Probably
maybe?
raccoon, or it may have been a coyote, some type of mammal. But historically, that would have gone down as a mammalian kill or something taken out by a mesocarnivore.
Right.
When truly it was probably a Buick, like it just smacked it going 65 down the road. So that kind of opens the door.
Tesla would have had a warning on it.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen what the screen looked like though with the bird coming across.
Yeah.
But little things like that can even kind of reopen the door on some of the historical data that we have. Of we made some inferences from that data before. Was that right, or can we
Right.
alter some of that to figure out what's going on? And hopefully at the end of
So
the day,
you could pinpoint that to where it was hit, but then by the time you got there,
It had moved.
something had dragged it
yeah.
off.
So
and
we
ate the
sent
meat.
we sent the researchers out to go locate this bird. And I said, it should be right on the yellow line. And they get there and it's not there.
Yeah.
They don't have access to the satellite data.
right.
So they call back to the researcher and go, okay, where's it at? And he, okay, no, it's 100 yards northwest of you. And they went out and within about a meter, they were
They
right
found
on
it. That's crazy.
It's a lot of fun until you're out in, pack rat and sand rat country where they've taken these and shoved them down their holes and you end up having to dig 3 feet to try to find it. It becomes a lot of, with groundbreaking technology comes groundbreaking headache and heartburn.
How many do you have tracked?
So all said and done, I don't remember the total number, but we were over 100 quail, probably closer to 200 quail that we had these collars on. And this was across 4 different WMAs in Oklahoma. So that included our Beaver River WMA, Pack Saddle, Sandy Sanders, and Cross Timbers WMAs. So that kind of goes from, pull my map back up so you know what I'm talking about. The Panhandle up here
Yep.
for our Beaver River, pack saddle right in here, Sandy Sanders, and then cross timber.
Pretty big area there.
Yeah, so we tried to cover, historically, basically all of the research has been in far western Oklahoma. And, you know, we got quail statewide, so why wouldn't we start to go a little further east? And so that's why we incorporated that cross timbers, and it's cross timbers ecoregion. So kind of mix of oak and prairie.
Go to sleep.
Not mine too.
Did I say that loud
Yeah, no,
enough for them to hear?
I was thinking at 15.
Probably.
I was thinking at
My
15.
right cheek's asleep.
My right cheek's asleep, and I'm done. Anyway, everybody, thank you for coming on the podcast, sharing a few stories. I'll be leaning on all you for a little bit of information, and I'm sure we're going to see Watson up in Michigan at some point.
With his setter.
With his setter and his griffin.
One day.
And
Hey, Griffon.
Griffon.
I was informed it's pronounced Griffon.
It's like poupon.
It is. It's like
Griffins are
a
the lion-headed
Broquet Francais, or
things.
you know what they call
Griffons are
those?
the
The
dogs.
French Britneys?
Epignon Breton.
Yeah, Breton.
Buffoons, aren't they?
Epignon Breton.
There you go.
All right. Good night, everybody.